Chapter 41. No. 41 The lovely lady Nagant. It's Nagant. Switch. I yelled as I switched out photo manipulation for projection sorcery. I glitched out of sight and reappeared across the roof. Hearing a whiz slice through the air, I jumped across several rooftops, dodging bullet after bullet. With each dodge, the bullets grew closer and closer to my position. Using CE, I increased my speed to clear the city block I was in within a flash. Damn it, I'm starting to regret using so much of my CE today. Using blood manipulation, I used a blood tendril to stop my movement, letting me narrowly miss a bullet that smashed through a glass window from the building beside me. Blood spread over my eyes in a mask as I activated flowing red scale, further boosting my movement speed and reflexes. In conjunction, I used construction to create armor around my vitals with my liquid metal. She's good. She's very good, I said as I ran through the city. I can't use my wings or summon new due to not having the 10 shadows equipped. Even if I did, being in the air would make it hard for me to change directions while also making me an easier target. That's something I can't afford to do with Nagant. While I was moving, I slowly worked my way towards her bird's nest. I needed to close the distance between us in order to take her down. However, that was easier said than done. Bang! A different direction. I looked to my left toward where the latest bullet came from. She must have moved. But how? She shouldn't have airwalk. A support item. 2 more shots rang out, and I saw the air shift in front of me. Even if I had Toji's perception, that didn't mean my body was equipped with the speed to keep up with it. Even now, my CE enhanced body alongside flowing red scale made me barely fast enough to dodge one bullet. Shit. This one's got a curve to it. Gay. Blood splattered behind me as her second bullet sliced through the side of my stomach where my armor didn't protect me. Damn it. If only I had Yuta's or Sukuna's CE. I would have been able to speed blitz her. My eyes zoomed off to where the bullets came from. I was able to finally see how Nagant was moving around. Strapped to her back was a compact jetpack that allowed her to boost from rooftop to rooftop while a grappling hook strapped to her left arm yanked her where she wanted to land. Not only that, but she also had some sort of hover boots that gave her a boost of speed. At it Nobleman at. It seems like the HPSC isn't playing around. That gear looks expensive. I yelled toward Nagant. Her head twitched as she leveled her sniper and fired another shot. Show me what you've got. Projection, construction, and blood manipulation. Those are my current techniques after using my binding vow once. I needed to find a way to close the distance using these 3 techniques. Otherwise, it's game over. Let's see how well you keep up with me with this. I yelled as I pushed projection sorcery to its maximum, causing my body to glitch all over the city as I rushed toward her. XXX. General Pav. How the hell is he so fast? Kana yelled as she activated her jetpack to launch herself to the building across from her. While in midair, she saw Sukuna seemingly glitch out of reality as he quickly approached her position. He hasn't used that ice quirk of his either. Does that mean he really does have multiple quirks? Tracking down Sukuna was no easy task. After receiving her assignment 2 weeks ago, Kana had poured every recourse available to her to track the so-called King of Curses down. Seeing as how the task of finding and taking down Sukuna had failed to find him for several months, Kana decided to take a different approach from actively searching for him. Instead, she focused her efforts on finding criminals and villains who met Sukuna's established mo. If you find them, then it would only be a matter of time before Sukuna would come knocking down their door. A door you had a pair of eyes trained on. Still, her plan wasn't flawless. Even after finding several criminals and villains that had a high potential of being his target, she always seemed to be one step behind Sukuna. That was until he made the mistake of creating a public execution in front of many civilians on a busy street. Luckily for Kana, she was only a few blocks away from the incident. Raising her left arm, Kana fired her grappling hook toward the building's concrete roof. Feeling it anchor, she quickly retracted the cable, sending her through the air with a jerk. Before she could crash into the ground, Kana unclasped the grappling hook and activated her hover boots to slide across the entire length of the roof in 2 seconds. With a jump, Kana raised her sniper arm and aimed. Her trained eyes scanned the sky, buildings, and rooftops before she saw a flicker of movement. Trusting her hard-earned instincts and skills, Kana fired a shot toward where she knew her target would be. Bang! With her scouter, Kana saw Sukuna raise his left arm. In an instant, a large plate of black liquid created a shield in front of his chest. Her bullet struck true and sent him skidding back. Coming to a stop, The black shield Sukuna created broke from the impact, causing him to look straight at her with a wide grin. He's good. I'll give him that, Kana muttered as she ripped off a lock of her hair. On command, her hair changed its shape into a long, sharp bullet she injected into her sniper arm. I guess you don't get as famous as you did without the skills to back it up. Raising her rifle up, Kana zeroed in on Sukuna's head. Lady Nagant. Lady Nagant. Oh wow. Can I shake your hand? A small boy from a group of children asked excitedly as they ran up to her. Me, too. You're the best. Hey, sure. But only if you kids have been good. Kana said as she turned away from the officer she was speaking with to offer the children her hand. Extending it, Kana's eyes widened when she saw her arm covered in deep crimson. This isn't the time to think about that, Kana said as she watched her target disappear again. Her brief distraction had caused her to miss her opportunity. Focus on the mission. Your last mission. Whoosh. At the sight of an incredibly fast-moving crimson spear, Kana jerked her body back as she activated her support gear just in time to avoid several crashing blood and steel spears landing all around her. Shit. Kana weaved in and out from the falling weapons before she heard the clattering sound of steel. The hell? Turning her head, she saw several chains clattering through the sky and between the buildings around her. Kana spun in place with her rifle raised as she tried to find Sukuna amidst all the sounds and rushing chains around her. Right here, Nagant. Spinning, Kana fired her shot at the source of the voice. Her eyes grew wide when her bullet collided with a voice recorder, smashing it to pieces. A soft, almost inaudible tap behind her caused Kana to freeze. The sound was barely audible, but to her, it might as well have been a booming detonation. Roaring, she spun around with her rifle half raised, but it was too late. Checkmate, Sukuna muttered before he punched her. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. My fist met her stomach as I punched Nagant across the rooftop. Not stopping there, I rushed after her as she tumbled to the ground. Grabbing her by the front of her shirt, I pulled her to her feet and sunk my knee into her injured stomach. +15 SP. Gah. Nagant grunted as spittle and blood flew out. Her mouth. Reaching back, I tore off her jetpack and threw it off the rooftop. She glared at me as soon as she recovered her bearings. With quick precision, she snapped out 2 left jabs at me. Moving side to side, I avoided her blows and kicked down her rising sniper arm back to the ground. Lady Nagant, I said as I maintained a close distance between us. Using Wing Chun, I landed a series of strikes along her body. In a split second, I swiped my hand through the air and removed her grappling hook from her left forearm. I was wondering when those sorry excuses at the Safety Commission were going to send their attack dog. +20 SP. I'm not. Nagant didn't get to finish her sentence as I landed a left hook on her cheek. With a sharp stomp, I destroyed her left hover boot. I'm not their attack dog. Then tell me, why are you here? Enhancing my fist with CE, I punched Nagant's right shoulder, causing her to scream out in pain. Lady Nagant was by no means a bad fighter. No, if anything, she was extremely skilled in hand-to-hand combat. She wouldn't be as famous as she was if she couldn't perform without her sniping quirk. No doubt a result of the Safety Commission's years of training. Unfortunately for her, I was much more skilled. Stumbling back, Nagant managed to escape from the close range we had. With a rebellious roar, she raised her right arm despite the agonizing pain in her bruised shoulder and aimed the barrel of her shortened sniper right at my face. Shit, I messed up. I screamed in my head as I stared down the barrel that was only 30 centimeters away from my face. Bang. Everything around me slowed to a crawl as I watched the bullet leave its muzzle. There was at most half a second to react before the bullet shot through my head. The spinning pink and indigo bullet rippled through the air as it was a hair's breadth away. Switch. In a microsecond, I exchanged blood manipulation for the limitless technique. Using the limitless without the 6 eyes was not an impossible task to accomplish. No, it certainly was plausible to be used. However, using the technique without the 6 eyes' godly control of cursed energy made activating the neutral limitless, infinity, an extremely draining move. It was as if one were to try to collect a cup of water with a mesh strainer. It was an impossible task. This means that once I activate the limitless, I'll be throwing away my already depleted CE at record speeds. Crack. +50 SP. W what? Nagant yelled as her bullet stopped an inch away from my head by some invisible barrier. Fuck. My CE. I instantly felt my reserves begin to plummet with incredible speed. It's barely been half a second but I already feel my CE drop by 35%. Without wasting any more time, I slipped out of the bullet's path and deactivated the limitless. I ignored the feeling of exhaustion and rushed Nagant with pure, raw speed. Due to the shock of seeing her seemingly sure-kill bullet stop midair, Nagant was still frozen in shock and unprepared for the powerful blow I landed on her face, sending her flying back and over the roof's edge. Nagant was wide-eyed as she felt gravity take hold of her body. Closing her eyes in acceptance, she let her body plummet. That is until I shot to the edge of the rooftop and wrapped my fingers around her left wrist, stopping her from falling. She opened her eyes to look down at the dark, sparkling city streets below before looking up at me. Slowly, her indigo eyes grew wide in surprise as she looked over my exposed face. The black hood that usually hid my identity had blown off in my burst of speed in order to reach her before she fell. Plus 50 SP. You're just a kid, Nagant said with horror. Her eyes trembled as she examined my features. I almost killed a kid. I'm not a kid, I said as I looked down at her hanging form. I'm almost 16. She remained silent before she looked over to her right arm. I kept quiet as she had her internal struggle before she sighed. Go ahead. Drop me. End this already. Do you want to die? I asked. I don't know, Nagant muttered. A strong breeze blew past us, tousling her long hair to the side. But it doesn't matter what I want. I tried to kill you. I'm sure you've killed for less. So go ahead. I frowned at her answer and sighed. Lady Nagant, a tragic character who was groomed by the Hero Public Safety Commission to become its ruthless executioner in the original storyline. She reached her breaking point when she was ordered to kill 2 heroes and instead killed the commission chairman. This act led to her imprisonment in Tartarus. Eventually, she was used by all for one to capture Izuku for him. While it seems that the event where she killed the chairman had yet to happen, Nagant still had that dead, lifeless look in her eyes. She was nearing her breaking point. If left alive after this, Nagant would indeed proceed with killing the man who turned her into an unstoppable killing machine, killing the once hopeful young girl with dreams of grand heroics and serving the public. Nagant. Raising her head at my voice, the woman stared up at me with defeat. I have a proposition for you. Plus 15 SP. A proposition. You want me to make a deal with a serial killer like you? Nagant said as she looked down at the far-off ground. I suppose I don't have much of a choice with my current situation. I smiled in amusement at her response. Trust me, I think this will work out for the both of us. Chapter 42. No. 42 UA entrance exam. A few weeks later. There it is. I've only seen it from far away, but it's so much more amazing in person. I rolled my eyes at how Izuku and Keiko were geeking out over UA's main entrance, which happened to be UA's famous UA barrier. The barrier's primary purpose was to keep out those without a staff ID, student ID, or a special permission pass to enter. Around us were several dozen hopeful students making their way in through the gates with their special permission passes. Passes that Himiko and I have in our pockets. I was expecting more, Himiko muttered as she rested her chin on my shoulder, a bored look on her expression. More, Keiko yelled in disbelief. Rushing over to Himiko, Keiko grabbed her shoulders and began to rock her back and forth. Himiko-chan. This is UA, the greatest and most prolific hero school in Japan. You can't understand how jealous I am that you and Su-chan get to go before me. Relax, Keiko, I muttered as I picked up Keiko with little issue, saving Himiko, who looked dizzy from all the shaking. Remember, we still need to pass the entrance exam. Besides, we're here for General Ed. So who cares about all that extra hero crap? 16x5 equals plus 80 SP. What did he say? Why is that loser even here then? Such disrespect. Did he say, General Ed? He must be weak if he can't even think of taking the hero course exams. Izuku looked nervous from the annoyed looks and comments I received from my comment from those around us. I, on the other hand, didn't care about their little opinions and placed Keiko down. Alright, you two need to go home now. I looked over them both with a pointed look, causing them to look disappointed. I said I'd take you to the entrance to look at the building. Now that I have done that, you both have to go home. Himiko and I need to go take that exam. Plus 10 SP. Plus 5 SP. It's okay, Keiko-chan, Izuku-kun. You'll both be attending the school in another year. Oh, I can't wait for all of us to walk home together. Himiko smiled as she did a little excited dance. I rubbed my hair and grabbed her wrist to begin pulling her towards the large H-shaped building that was the school. Go on, you two. Be sure to text me when you get home. Keiko and Izuku nodded before waving goodbye. Okay. You two got this. Keiko yelled with a thumbs up. Good luck, Soda-san. Toga-san. Izuku called out, a little more subdued. Hamiko waved at them while I nodded with a slight grin. Turning up at the building, I noticed that the anime didn't do it justice. It was a massive building made up of hundreds of glass panels. The school grounds themselves were mind-boggling in scale, going off the complimentary map they gave to all the student hopefuls. It made me wonder just how much money funded this place. Jumping over beside me, Hamiko wrapped her arms around my right arm with a happy smile. This caused several of the students around us to blush at our bold behavior on school grounds. Let's do our best, Soda-kun. Yeah, let's do our best. Would it kill you to sound a little excited? Maybe. XXX. Some would imagine that the entrance exam for one of Japan's most prodigious schools would be rather difficult. So, when I went over all of the questions from the rather thick booklet that was our test packet, I came to one conclusion. This exam ain't shit. Sure, for anyone with room temperature IQ, I could see this test being a colossal challenge. But for someone like myself, this was a breeze. After taking 15 minutes out of the 2-hour exam, I stood up and submitted my booklet to the astonished overseers sitting behind a long table. Several dozen other students remained in the large hall, still working on their exams, and they looked at me with expressions of confusion or amusement. Do you have a question? A woman dressed in an ordinary suit and tie asked. The man sitting beside her eyed me with annoyance. He probably thought I wasn't taking this seriously or something. Joke's on him. I actually wasn't taking this seriously. Nope. I'm all done, I said with my hands in my pockets. I looked around the table in front of them with curiosity. What's next? Another packet or something? +5 SP. No. For the general education course, all you need to do is pass the written exam with at least an 85 to 90% score. The woman said slowly as if talking to a dimwit. Would you like to take another look at your exam? Nope. I smiled at the woman, causing her eyebrow to twitch. If that's it, I'll be leaving now. +5 SP. +5 SP. Not waiting for her or the annoyed man beside her to speak, I left the testing room and looked around at the massive hallways. Seeing that no one was around to stop me from wandering, I decided to go ahead and explore the place. Walking around unimpeded, I strolled by several empty classrooms, lecture halls, gymnasiums, and even some bathrooms. Some rather unique and clean bathrooms. While extremely large and impressive looking, UA was rather bland. Then again, the school was empty today in order to hold the entrance exams for all the new student hopefuls. Walking around a corner, I paused when I finally found the school's expansive cafeteria. Sniffing the air, I picked up a rather pleasant aroma and strolled into the cafeteria. Off to the side was a relatively small line of people grabbing some food. Seeing the iconic blue, white, and red gym uniforms of UA, I figured these people were students grabbing a bite to eat. Shrugging, I walked over to the line and grabbed a lunch tray. Stepping beside one of the UA students, I waited for my turn. What will it be, young man? The chef behind the counter asked. He was wearing a cooking apron and a chef hat, as well as a mask that covered his face. He also wears white gloves and shoes. There's also a tube that connects from his mouth to his back. Blinking, I quickly realized that this was the pro hero, Lunch Rush. Chef's choice, I said with an easygoing grin. Lunch Rush looked surprised at first before nodding in excitement. +15 SP. Now, that's something I don't hear too often. Very well. Leave it to me, Lunch Rush said before his hands moved in a blur. In no time, he placed a mouth-watering bowl of Nabeyaki udon. Please enjoy. Believe me, I will. After paying for my food, I found a lone spot on a long lunch table and dug into the incredibly delicious bowl of noodles. I was so lost in my meal that I failed to notice someone plopping down beside me with a tray of their own food. Hello there. You're a new face. A girl with long light blue periwinkle hair and blue eyes said as she turned to me with a wide smile. Hey, did you know you have this bad vibe around you? Oh, how'd you get that scar on your neck? You're not wearing a school uniform or a gym uniform. Are you here for the entrance exams? +10 SP. I muttered as I held up some noodles in my chopsticks. Snapping out of my bliss from the delicious food, I realized who was sitting beside me. It was Hado Najire. XXX. My patience is being tested. After finishing my pleasant lunch, Najire apparently took it upon herself to continue following me around. When I asked her why, she said that she was extremely curious as to why I radiated such a negative vibe. So why did you choose Ua to go to anyway? Oh, you're a year younger than me, but you're almost as tall as Tagata-san. You must have some really good genetics. Najire said as she walked beside me. Shouldn't you be anywhere else, Hato? I stopped walking and turned to the bright girl with a deadpan stare. She tilted her head in confusion before shaking her head. +5 SP. I don't think so. Nope. I'm totally free. There you are, Hato-san. Najire and I turned to look at another student with pointy elf-like ears. He has messy, dark indigo hair, which sticks out behind his head, and thin, tired-looking eyes that are partially covered by his bangs. His shoulders were hunched over as he walked over to us. The man, the myth, the bundle of anxious nerves, it's Sun Eater. Amajiki-kun. Najire jumped as she walked over to Amajiki Tamaki, another member of UA's future Big Three. What are you doing here? I thought you were training with Tagata-san. Pausing, Tamaki looked over at me before hunching over and avoiding any eye contact. Looking closer, I saw his shoulders tremble slightly. I was, but Mirio asked me to get you. There's something he wants to test out that he needs your help with. Tamaki said in a hard-to-hear voice. AWH. Really? But I was having so much fun with my new friend. Najire whined before brightening up. Let me introduce you, Amajiki-kun. This is Shimizu Soda, a soon-to-be first year. Hello, Tamaki muttered, still refusing to meet my eyes. Sup? I said to him before turning to Najire. We're friends. The best. Najire nodded and ran over to Tamaki. I'll find you again once you officially join UA, Shimizu-kun. I have to go help Tagata-san. Bye-bye. +10 SP. +10 SP. Before Tamaki or I could say a word to one another, she grabbed him by his wrist and all but dragged him through the hallway. I stood rooted in place until they were out of sight. She's a bit annoying. But she's also cute. I muttered. I guess that evens out. XXX. We're home. Hamiko called out as she threw her book bag down onto the floor after she took off her shoes. Welcome home. Jin called out from deep in the house. I followed behind her as she ran through the main hall toward the living room. Kana Onichan. That exam was so hard. Entering the living room, I watched as Hamiko jumped into the arms of Tsutsumi Kana. Otherwise known as Lady Nagant. Kana had an uncomfortable expression as she rubbed Hamiko's back from where she was sitting on the couch. She turned to me with a look that asked for help, but I only shrugged my shoulders. There. Hamiko smiled and pressed her face into Kana's chest as she deepened her hug with the older woman. Kana blushed slightly from having Hamiko push her breasts around with her head. Why is the extremely dangerous hitman, Lady Nagant, in my home? I can hear you ask. You see, after our showdown in the streets of Shinjuku, I had proposed to Kana that she abandon the HPSC in order to come work under me. I promised her that if she did, I would help her take down the corrupt organization that was once meant to protect and serve the public before falling to a more sinister regime that pushed Kana and other young, hopeful people to become what were essentially assassins. In return, Kana would offer me help whenever I asked for it. Which hopefully wouldn't happen too often. I didn't want to push the traumatized woman any further than she already was. At first, she was hesitant to join the infamous Sukuna, but after explaining to her what I truly did and stood for, she finally agreed. It seemed that the HPSC had embellished my reputation to the point that I was some sort of boogeyman to everyone who knew my name. Kana was worried that after betraying the HPSC, they would send someone to hunt her down. However, I assured her that she would be completely safe under my protection. The multiple layers of security at my large home would provide her with the peace of mind she needs to heal her worn-down spirit. Upon hearing we had a new housemate, Hamiko had all but glowed in happiness at the prospect of another woman living with us. She even began treating Kana like the big sister she never had, much to the older woman's embarrassment. Kana struggled to deny Hamiko, most likely due to her weakness against children. She could have done without Hamiko's excessive touchiness, though. Who would have thought the extraordinarily lethal and dangerous Lady Nagant had a soft spot for kids? When it came to Jin, the two got along well. Even if Kana thought he was a bit odd. Every now and then, one of Jin's jokes cracked through her mask of indifference and toughness, giving us a glimpse of her warm, softer side. My relationship with her was one of mutual respect. Despite her seeing me as a supposed kid, she knew I handled myself like a grown adult. When I wanted to, at least. I wasn't sure if I would call our relationship friendship. I knew that we had an odd connection due to our bloody history. We understood one another in a way no one else could. Soda, you're finally here. Jin said as he looked up from the large pot he was working on. How was your exam? You botched it, didn't you? Added Nobleman at. I think it went all right, I said as I took a seat on one of the stools beside the kitchen island. I shouldn't have anything to worry about when it comes to getting in or not. The exam was easy. Plus 15 SP. Easy. Himiko shot up, much to Kaina's relief. That exam was one of the hardest things I've ever done. There were also a bunch of stupid questions involving heroics, too. Well, it is a hero school, Kaina said as she picked up her book and resumed her reading. Even if you're not in the heroics course, don't be surprised if they sprinkle in some topics involving heroes. Yeah, what she said, Jin said as he pointed at Kaina. Behind him, the pot began to boil over. Oh no, my soup, I guess. Himiko pouted before she sat against Kaina on the couch. Still, I think it should be pretty fun going. To you, I still fail to see how going there benefits you, Soda-san. Kaina looked over at me with a confused expression. All you're doing is placing yourself in unnecessary danger. Your disguise is just a hood and some magic tattoos, after all. Relax, Kaina, I have my reasons. I smiled lazily at the woman as I tried some of Jin's soup. Besides, haven't you ever heard of hiding in plain sight? I'll be fine. Kaina didn't look convinced, but she dropped the subject nonetheless, choosing to instead focus on her book. Just as I was about to go to my library to grab a book of my own, I felt a strong pull in my mind. Stopping mid-step, I closed my eyes and focused my senses. In no time, I opened my eyes to see through the eyes of one of my crows. Looking down, I watched a rough-looking man with several children's toys step inside a black sedan. After placing all the newly bought toys in the back seat, the man reached over to the passenger seat, where a black plague mask sat underneath the coat. Found you. Chapter 43. No. 43 Attack on the Shihasaikai. All right, everyone, listen up. I stepped before a large printout of an expansive connecting business building tucked away between several other homes and buildings. Surrounding the extensive building was a tall gate with only one entrance at the front. Several other pictures were taped below it, showing the surrounding empty homes and other structures. Himiko, Jin, Kaina, and I were all in one of my extra rooms, which I had transformed into a small war room. A long table lined with 3 chairs on each side stood in the middle of the room. This here is the Shihasaikai compound. It's run and operated by the 8 Precepts of Death, headed by Overhaul. Its newest Yakuza boss, I said as I pointed at a blurry image of a man with brown hair dressed in an oversized green jacket. The man's most standout feature was the red and gold plague mask over his nose and mouth. In the picture, Overhaul is walking through one of the building's connecting hallways, followed by a man dressed in a long white raincoat and holding his hood up. A black and gold plague mask sat over his face. In his arms was a small girl who seemed to try to shrink into herself. Behind him is his right-hand man, Chronostasis. In his arms is our main objective, Eri. The girl they're experimenting on to create this quirk-destroying drug, Kaina said with narrowed eyes as she held the red cartridge bullet between her fingers. Sitting beside her, Himiko shifted uncomfortably as she looked at Eri with a sad expression. Jin leaned forward on the table, his usual loud personality silent. I nodded before pointing to each photo of Overhaul's 8 bullets. That's right. That bastard has been slicing Eri and using her quirk to fashion a new line of quirk-erasing bullets. Until recently, one of my other targets shot me with one to erase my quirk. Considering that was the first time I've seen the drug being used, it's safe to say Overhaul has a working prototype he's giving criminals to use. I said as I motioned at the bullet in Kaina's grasp. Unfortunately for them, it didn't affect you, thanks to your cursed energy. Jin said as he punched the air in front of him. The fool. Right, that negative energy of yours, Kaina muttered as she looked at me thoughtfully. It still amazes me how only you can use such a unique power source. Not to mention the seemingly endless abilities it gives you. It's a little unfair if I'm being honest. Plus 10 SP. Plus 10 SP. Plus 10 SP. Sukuna-kun is basically a walking cheat code, Himiko said. That's right, that means I won't have to worry about being shot by those bullets and losing my abilities. You 3, however, still can lose your quirks if you do get shot. I walked over to the map that was sitting on the table and pointed at the building's main entrance. For that reason, I will be entering in first while loudly announcing my presence. Once I've gotten the compound's attention, Himiko and Jin will move in after me to look for Eri with the help of my scout rabbits. Moving my finger across the map, I ended up pointing to a building a few blocks away. Kaina, You're to provide them cover fire once they have a hold of Eri. While I'm confident I can take down most of Overhaul's men, I'm not blind to think some could slip through and chase after them. You'll also stop any reinforcements from entering the compound. +10 SP. Consider it done, Kana said with a nod. Hamiko. I turned to the blonde girl. Thanks to the modifications I made to your outfit, you should be able to make full use of your quirk to bypass their defenses once I make my entrance. You'll disguise yourself as one of the Yakuza so you can search for Eri unimpeded. No problem. I'll find Eri-chan and snatch her from right beneath their noses. At Nobleman at. What about me? What about me? Jin said as he raised his arm like an excited student. What's my task? Jin, you'll be Hamiko's shadow. Follow her in her disguise and take out any of Overhaul's underlings through the compound. You'll also create 2 clones of me to act as your 2's backup. You need to make sure you have a clear escape route out of the building once Hamiko has secured Eri. Because once they realize she's missing, they're going to come after her like rabid dogs. +10 SP. You got it. Leave it to me. I'm impressed you gathered all this information in such a short amount of time, Kana said as she looked over all the intel in the room. In my opinion, those crows of yours are probably your most impressive ability. It's all thanks to Nanami's hard work. That crow is the reason we finally caught sight of one of Chisaki's men. I gave her a smile and nodded. Yeah, there's no better intelligence gathering team than my crows. Now then, let's go over each of the Overhaul's bullets and what they can do. XXX. General Pav. Pain. All Eri knew was pain and fear. Ever since her mother disowned her after she accidentally made her father disappear with her quirk, Eri had been subjected to dozens of experiments by that cruel man, Chisaki. Her body had been sliced and ripped apart so many times that she no longer knew the total number. But what she did know was the deep, intense pain she felt every time she was brought into that room. Even as she sat in her large, dark room, Eri was terrified. The toys Chisaki's men bought for her were strewn all around, ignored by her. There was no joy to be found in them. Only fear. Laying on her side, Eri curled herself into a ball as tears streamed down her face. The bandages tied around her arms and legs itched as she held herself in an attempt to find some comfort. But whenever some of her bare skin touched her bandages, she was quickly reminded that there was no escape from the pain. Mommy. Aries whispered. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do that to Daddy. Closing her eyes, Aries' mind worked against her and replayed the memories of her father screaming as his body was reminded back into nothing. Eri could only stand in shock as she looked over her father's scattered clothes. She was only brought out of her numb confusion once her mother began to scream. I'm so sorry. Holding herself tightly, Eri made a weak wish within her mind. Not to escape her current situation but for someone to hold her and comfort her. To make all her pain, fear, and guilt go away. In the eerie silence of her dark room, Eri cried herself to sleep. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. Is it done? I heard a sigh from the other end of my phone. Yeah, we're currently getting the last resident in the ward out. We're still working on getting the next ward to move, but it'll take some time. Detective Yoichi said. You wanna tell me what's going on over there? I grinned at the man's curiosity as I looked down at the large compound below. Since this was Yakuza territory, I didn't have to worry about civilians getting in the way of our operation due to all the surrounding buildings being empty. They were all a front set up by Overhaul to keep everyone away from his base of operations. Evacuating everyone else close by was just a cautionary step. After a quick fly through with my crows, I was sure that no one who didn't belong here was within a 100-meter range of the compound. I told you, didn't I? I said lowly. There's going to be a grand light show. Hanging up the phone, I raised my right hand up and held up my middle and pointer fingers out. Emerge from darkness, blacker than darkness. Purify that which is impure. Above the compound, a black slime-like substance appeared over the sky and crawled down toward the ground. It extended out 30 meters from the compound radius. Once my veil was up, I lifted my hands and clenched them together to activate my latest technique. Maximum output. Forest encirclement. XXX. General Pav. Dressed in a modified version of her hero costume, Kana had her sights trained on the far-off compound with a steady eye. Floating above her was Jello. The Shikigami was there to act as Kana's sentinel while she kept an overwatch over the compound. Suddenly, everything around the compound began to shake uncontrollably as several hundred roots shot out of the ground to form a wall all around the compound, trapping everyone within the ring of plant life. So that's the bang he was talking about, Kana muttered as her direct line of sight into the building was left unimpeded. Show off. XXX. Off within the Shihasaikai compound, Kai looked around in confusion as his surroundings began to tremble. Turning to his second in command, Kai saw the man try to remain on his feet as everything shook. What is this? Kai roared in anger as he rushed out of his office. As he struggled to balance himself, Kai finally left the room and looked out of the hallway window. Quote. What? As far as he could see, his compound was surrounded by thick roots that seemed to reach the skies themselves. Overhaul. Hari yelled as the trembling finally began to subside. Are we being attacked? Kai glared at the roots outside and spun on his feet. Speed walking, Kai and Hari made their way through the compound. Move the boss out of the compound at once. When he's safe, gather all our research and get it all to Site B. Kai growled out. Hari nodded and lifted his phone to make the call necessary, only to find that his signal was jammed. Our communication has been jammed. Kai glared at Hari and quickened his pace. Then go on foot. I'll grab Eri. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. Landing in front of the compound's front gate, I lifted my leg and broke down its doors. Rushing toward the front doors, I lifted my hand and sent a ball of fire crashing through them. Several grunts of pain yelled out as my attack blew the doors off their hinges. Stepping inside, I looked down at a few Yakuza grunts sprawled out on the floor. 5x7 equals plus 35 SP. Sorry, I'm not taking my shoes off, I said and made a hand sign. Rabbit escape. Rising from below were 6 dozen rabbits, spreading apart. They all gathered into 6 teams of 12. In front of each squad was a lone rabbit squad leader. They turned to me with curious expressions. Find Eri and then lead Himiko and Jin to her. Nodding, they all scampered throughout the hall. I watched some open a few doors while others jumped into the ventilation system. I waited a few moments before I heard 2 pairs of footsteps behind me. Himiko and Jin looked around the ruined front doors and then at the knocked out or dead men on the ground. Plus 10 SP. Plus 10 SP. What an entrance, Jin said as he raised his hands up to create 2 perfect clones of myself. They turned to one another and shrugged before they tried to summon one of my Shikigami. That's odd. One of the twice clones said. I can't feel any CE within me. That's because you're twice clones, I said to them, causing them to nod and accept their situation. Which made sense. I was pretty used to having copies of myself. They were mainly here to provide Jin and Himiko with some extra muscle. This one will do, Himiko said as she crouched next to one of the Yakuza thugs. Using her new blood extraction system that I created for her, she began to drain out a cup of blood from the man below. With a smile, Himiko then drank the blood. Jin and I watched as her body morphed to resemble the Yakuza member perfectly, except for the gear she wore, which was now strapped to the man. See, I told you I had to be naked for this to be perfect. Himiko's new low voice whined. Yeah, no, I'm not having you walk around in the nude. I said before the 3 of us heard several running footsteps approaching our position. I'll clear a path. I already have my rabbits searching all throughout the compound. Once they find Eri, one of them will come find you. Okay. Copy that. Nodding at them, I slid my hands in my pockets and walked over toward the quickly approaching group of Yakuza thugs. Scanning their group, I saw that none of the 8 bullets were with them. Grinning, I stomped my foot and sent a wave of sharp roots that shattered through the floor toward them. My newest diamond tier curse technique, Disaster Plants, belong to the Disaster Curse, Hanami. This technique allows the user to form and control a variety of cursed flora. Its capabilities are normally initiated telepathically, activating the technique next to the user or near a target, but it can also be deployed from the user's body. The plants created by this technique can vary in size, shape, and physiology. Anything from simple flowers to giant wooden roots can be formed. The flora of the technique is, however, still made from cursed energy, meaning that curse-like plants can be created quickly and deactivated instantly. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to absorb the life energy from the plant life around me due to lacking the large red flower that Hanami had on their shoulder. While disappointing, it wasn't that big a deal. The large group of Yakuza thugs all tried to come to a stop at the sight of the incoming wave of wooden spikes. Unfortunately for them, they were too slow to evade my attack. One by one, they were all quickly skewered by my sharp wooden spikes in a wave of blood and violence. Grinning at their defeat, I slowly made my way through the compound. 13x25 equals plus 325 SP. Now then, come and get me. Chapter 44. No. 44 The Ninth Shadow. You. You dare attack the Shihasaikai? I grinned at the three Yakuza standing in my way. Those three were Yu, Setsuno Toya, and Tabe Sorimitsu of the 8 Bullets. Yu was a tall, muscular man with shadowed eyes with a shaved head. His choice of mask was a simple medical mask that covered his mouth, unlike the signature beak-like mask worn by the rest of the 8 Bullets. Toya had chin-length golden blonde hair that was parted to his left to obscure his right eye. A beak-shaped plague mask rested over his mouth and nose. Finally, Sorimitsu wore a ragged burlap sack mask, unlike his fellow Bullets, which covered his entire head and was held by a rope knot around his neck. The mask has 2 openings from where Sorimitsu's eyes are visible and a stitched smile. It's the 3 that fought Tamaki. Huh, answer me, damn it, Toya yelled, his eyes burning with anger. Let's see. A man who can snatch any one item he wants while another can sprout crystals from his body. And then there's you, ugly. All you do is eat. I said as I pointed to each one of them, causing their expressions to grow panicked after I announced their quirks. +5 SP. +5 SP. +5 SP. How do you know this information? You said carefully, his expression cautious. Did one of our men talk? That doesn't really matter at this point. I began walking towards them with a growing smile. Flames came to life all around me as miniature volcano heads grew all around the walls. After all, you 3 are all dying today. XXX. General Pav. Running through the halls, Himiko swung open each door she came across with a bang. With another bang, she looked around the room full of surprised Yakuza thugs room with annoyance. Damn it, she said in the low voice of her current Yakuza disguise. At a nobleman at. Let's keep moving. Himiko nodded at twice clone Sukuna as the two continued running through the hallway, leaving behind several confused thugs. What the hell? Was that Fujimoto? Since when does he wear glasses? One of the thugs asked as they stepped out of the room to watch the disguised Himiko and TC Sukuna run away. Yeah, it was. But who the hell was that guy? Hello. Jin shouted from behind the group. Spinning around, the small group of thugs turned to see Jin and another Sukuna clone standing a few meters away. Get ready to get your teeth kicked in. It'll only hurt for a second. The small group of thugs never stood a chance at the combined might of Jin and TC Sukuna as they dispatched them all with precision, speed, and skill. Turning a corner, Himiko and her partner came to a halt as a small white rabbit waved its little arms at them. Did you find her? Himiko asked with a smile. At the rabbit's quick nods, Himiko pumped her hands in victory as she released her disguise. Reaching behind her, she grabbed her cat mask and slipped it over her face. Lead the way then. You go on ahead, Himiko. TC Sukuna said as Himiko turned to see a man with a black plague mask and a furry vest. Behind him were several other Yakuza thugs holding various kinds of weapons. I'll hold off these clowns. I can help. Go. TC Sukuna said as he slid into a loose fighting stance. Remember, I'm just a clone. You 2 punks really think I'd let you go? Sakari Diodoro yelled sluggishly. He raised a large green bottle of soju and began chugging the drink. Have a little taste of my quirk. Wham! I may not be as fast as the original. TC Sukuna said as he slammed his right fist into Diodoro's stomach, causing the lanky man to throw up all his alcohol, momentarily stunning the man. But this should be more than enough for you, sorry sacks. Himiko didn't waste another second and sprinted after the rabbit. Good luck, Sukuna-kun. Don't worry about me. Save Eri. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. Deciding to pick up the pace, I rushed through the hallways, sending waves of sharp roots and balls of fire through the compound. Several of Overhaul's common thugs tried to get in my way, but they all ended up being nothing but a minor inconvenience. Coming to a stop, I looked around the large open room I ended up in. My eyes came to a halt at the sight of 2 black mask-wearing individuals standing in the center. Rappa Kendo and Tengai Hekiji. Kendo is a huge, muscular man with long, light brown hair. He is wearing a tattered t-shirt and dark pants covered by a light blue tunic and is decorated with 2 belts. He also sported a pair of gloves with leather straps that covered his knuckles with metal. Hekiji wore a traditional dark-colored yukata with a pair of geta on his feet, a long white piece of cloth acting as a belt around his waist. On his face was a plain brown plague mask strapped to his face with 3 belts, one down his forehead and one on each side of his face, that also covered his ears like mufflers. I've heard of you, Hekiji said with malice. Sukuna, the underworld's boogeyman. Tell me, king of curses. What have the Shihasaikai done to incur your wrath? +5 SP. Who flipping cares? Let's fight. King. Kendo yelled in excitement as he punched the air in front of him. Fight me like a real man. No weapons. Just our fists and fighting spirit. What has your little loser group done? I said, extenuating the word, loser. How about torturing a child? That's sufficient reason for you. +5 SP. +5 SP. I see. So your goal is to take the girl. Yeah, that and to kill each and every one of you. I said as I raised my hands into a brand new hand sign. You said you wanted a good fight. Well, let's see how you handle this, then. Morning Tiger. Rising from the shadows behind me was a 3-meter-tall muscular tiger. It stood on 2 powerful hind legs covered in black and red fur. With its anthropomorphic physique, Morning Tiger flexed its arms as it walked around me. Its long, sharp fangs shined in the light as it roared loudly, shaking the very room in its fury. +5 SP. +5 SP. What was that? Hekiji yelled as he and Kendo looked around wildly for the source of the noise. That was one of the hardest Shikigami I have ever subdued, I said as I threw a pair of Maki's cursed tool glasses at them. Here. To make things somewhat fair. Confused but open for anything, Kendo ripped off his plaque mask goggles in favor of slipping in the glasses. Rappa. You fool. This could be some sort of trick. +15 SP. Amazing. Kendo muttered in awe as he laid his eyes on the large, muscular Shikigami. A large grin spread over Kendo's face as he punched his fists together. Now, this will be a fight for the ages. Rushing in simultaneously, Kendo and MT met in the center of the room. Their massive fists collided together, sending out an enormous shockwave around them. Confused as to why his partner was seemingly attacking the air in front of him, Hekiji tentatively placed the glasses over his eyes. Seeing the large Shikigami, the Yakuza member stepped back in shock. Pretty impressive, isn't it? I said as I watched Kendo and MT enter a pure hand-to-hand battle. It took me a month of careful planning to be able to subjugate that one. Now, he may not be Mahoraga, but MT isn't something to take lightly. Yes, this is it. This is the fight I've always dreamed of. Kendo said as his face was punched violently to the side by a mean hook. In retaliation, Kendo swung a powerful uppercut into MT's stomach, sending the Shikigami back slightly. Growling in anger, MT roared and spun its massive left arm for a wild haymaker that Kendo took on like a champ. Blood exploded from the large gash on the top of his skull, but he paid it no mind. Instead, Kendo began to unleash a torrent of punches at MT's chest. Gra! MT roared as it swiped its 5 sharp claws through Kendo's chest. Having moved back in time, the large brawler was able to avoid a lethal blow. Claws. Kendo roared in anger before shrugging. I suppose those are part of you. I'll allow it. This guy is the textbook definition of a battle maniac. Rappa. Watch out. Don't you dare interfere with this fight. Kendo spun back to glare at Hekiji, stopping the man from activating his quirk. If you do, I'll kill you myself. How about I just do that? Now. Blurring in front of Hekiji, I swung my katana through the air and watched it bounce off a round, golden barrier. Stepping back, I lazily looked inside to see Hekiji looking at me unimpressed. Did you really think it was going to be goo? Hekiji stopped speaking as blood spewed out of his mouth. Looking down, his eyes widened when he saw a large wooden spike spear through his chest. +25 SP. Yes, I did think it was going to be easy. I said with a grin while pointing at the ground. You see, you barrier types like to protect the area around you on the surface. But you never stop to think about what's beneath you. The man said nothing as his body slumped over, causing his barrier to disappear. With another bullet dead, I turned to watch MT and Kendo's fight finally reach its climax. The floors were cracked and broken while large craters and holes littered the walls all around the room from the non-stop onslaughts of attacks from the 2 strong combatants. Bruised and bloodied, Kendo's large grin never wavered as he breathed heavily. Across from him stood a perfectly intact MT. Its green eyes narrowed sharply at its enemy. Despite Kendo's relatively strong combat-based quirk, which granted him the ability to rotate his shoulders at extreme speeds to attack his targets with a near-endless barrage of bullet punches, he ended up being no match for MT. Morning Tiger was an incredibly strong Shikigami, being the second to last one of the 10 shadows, just behind the Divine General himself. MT's abilities were relatively minimal but incredibly impressive. Its large and powerful body already gave it the edge versus your run-of-the-mill fighters. Add on its expert level of close-quarters combat that involved quick, powerful strikes and slices from its claws, MT made for an opponent one could not get close to without a plan. To finish things off, similar to Mahorag, MT had a passive ability to learn and adapt to its opponent's fighting style, making it so that the longer you fought it, the easier it would be to predict your moves and attacks. It was a damn shame it never got shown off in the JJK canon because it ended up being one of the most badass looking and dangerous Shikigami on the 10 Shadows roster. Falling to his knees with both of his arms hanging uselessly beside him, Kendo looked up at MT and me with a satisfied expression. That's it. I'm spent. I've only lost to one other man. Safe to say, this fight takes the cake. Kendo turned to me before exposing his neck. You've earned your kill. Go for it. In a flash, MT swiped its massive right claws through Kendo's neck, removing the man's head from his shoulders in a splatter of blood. Plus 35 SP. With its job done, Morning Tiger sank away into my shadow, leaving me alone with 2 more dead bullets. Without giving the corpses another glance, I continued onward through the compound. Chapter 45. No. 45 Take down the Yakuza. General Pav. Well, what do we have here? Kana muttered as she watched several vehicles enter the surrounding veil. Sota had told her that the veil would help conceal the chaos from within, but it wouldn't stop anyone from getting inside because he didn't have the time to set up warding curtains. That meant anyone was capable of walking inside and coming upon their operation. The vehicles all came to a stop outside of the surrounding wall of thick roots. She watched several Yakuza thugs all step out and look up at the massive construct in confusion. One of the men walked up to the wall of roots and raised his hand, summoning a torrent of flames over his palm. Bang! Reloading, Kana watched as everyone began to scramble around in fear and confusion at the sight of their comrade's head being blown to pieces. Without pause, Kana began to unload bullet after bullet onto the Yakuza. She felt no hesitation or regret at killing them all. Why would she? If they were part of Overhaul's group, then they all stood by and did nothing as the man tortured and experimented on a helpless child. Bang! 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 XXX. With a backflip, Jin avoided a horizontal swipe of a spiked tail one of the Yakuza thugs sent his way. Dashing in, Jin struck a forward kick into the thug's stomach, staggering him. Capitalizing on the opening, Jin spun in place and crashed his foot onto his opponent's temple, knocking him out cold. See, I told you all your training was helping. Twice clone Sukuna said with a grin as he walked away from a small pile of knocked out or dead thugs. You call that training? It was torture. Jin yelled as they ran down the hall after Himiko. You had me throw down a jacket just to pick it up for hours. How is that good training? It worked, didn't it? Your parrying skills are on another level. No comment. Out of nowhere, the hallway Jin and TC Sukuna were in began to warp and spin, sending Jin to the floor while TC Sukuna barely stayed on his feet. Looks like Iranaka Joy finally found us. TC Sukuna said as he looked around the spinning room. If only I had my CE and techniques, I could have blown this entire hallway away. What do we do then? It's easy. We just have to find the bastard. TC Sukuna grinned as his eyes scanned the length of the hallway. Damn, I guess my advanced perception is missing too. We're in a pinch. What happened to all that confidence? Blam. TC Sukuna and Jin rolled out of the way from 2 large stone pillars that tried to crush them underneath. Jin shot to his feet and sprinted down the hall, only to trip as his surroundings began to twist again. TC Sukuna flipped and weaved away from several more incoming arms as he looked around at his surroundings. I may not be the original, but twice was at least able to implement my sharp eyesight and senses. Where is he? Where is he? TC Sukuna thought a while back, flipping away from several falling chunks of concrete. I just need to see a glimpse of him. Gah! Jin grunted as he was sent rolling back after Joy was able to finally land a strike on him. Ignoring the pain, Jin rolled to the side to dodge a crashing pillar that shattered the ground below. This isn't good, Sukuna. We need to escape. We can't bring this guy to Mystique or the real me. We have to take him out here and now. TC Sukuna yelled as he ran up the length of an incoming stone arm. Jin sighed and redoubled his efforts despite the pain in his left thigh. All right. Jin yelled before he drew out his twin katanas. Okay then. Maximum effort. XXX. Looking around at all the unconscious bodies, TC Sukuna grunted as he swayed back and forth. His vision was unfocused, and his stomach felt as if it was flipping non-stop. He looked over at his remaining enemy, Diodoro. The bullet himself was covered in bruises and blood. It was only thanks to his quirk, sloshed, that he was still standing. You're a tricky one. Even with my quirk's entire focus on you, you're still standing. Diodoro yelled from his spot on the ceiling. Just fall already. Not today. TC Sukuna said as he fought his dizziness and loss of balance. Dashing toward Diodoro, TC Sukuna sent a punch to the bullet but ended up missing due to his double vision. Diodoro laughed and shuffled back from TC Sukuna's range. Grunting in annoyance, TC Sukuna tripped before rushing Diodoro again. Without all his support, all Diodoro could do was run and evade his attacks. Then again, TC Sukuna knew he couldn't afford to get hit again. His body couldn't afford it. I just need one opening. Just one. TC Sukuna thought as he struggled to keep up with Diodoro. This guy. No one has ever managed to last this long. Just what is he? Diodoro thought as he crawled further back from the pipes he was hanging from. I just have to send him another blast of my quirk. That will. Diodoro jerked as the back of his left foot hit a wall from the dead end of the hallway. In his panicked evasion and inhibition, the bullet failed to notice that he was slowly and carefully being lured into a trap. Got you. TC Sukuna dashed in front of Diodoro and struck. Wah! Diodoro cried out in pain as he was sent crashing down on his left arm, breaking it. Now free of Diodoro's quirk, TC Sukuna ripped out one of the ceiling pipes and closed the distance in a flash. Standing over the bullet, TC Sukuna drove the pointed end of the pipe straight into Diodoro's skull. Panting, TC Sukuna leaned against the wall to catch his breath. Damn, doing this without CE is hard as shit. Bang. TC Sukuna blinked in confusion as he looked down at the bullet hole over his heart. Just as his body began melting away, he looked up at another member of the 8 bullets. In the man's hand was a handgun. Cheap move, you pussy. TC Sukuna said as his body splattered on the floor. Namoto Shin huffed in annoyance before looking down at Diodoro's corpse. Down the hall behind Shin in a wheelchair was an old comatose man. This man was the old Yakuza leader of the Shei Hasaikai. After giving his old comrade a somber look, Shin walked off to the comatose man and began wheeling him out of the compound. XXX. In here. Himiko panted as she looked down at the nodding rabbit. Grabbing the doorknob, Himiko carefully opened the door and peered into the large dark room. Strewn around on the floor were several toys. Noticing they were in pristine condition, Himiko walked into the room and found the large bed in the middle. There, sitting in its center, was a little girl with pale blue hair that reached the small of her back. Reaching up, Himiko removed her mask so as not to scare Eri. Eri-chan. Himiko softly asked as she crouched in front of the bed, causing Eri to flinch. You're Eri-chan, right? Why yes, Eri whispered in a soft, scared voice. Hearing the child speak in such a way made Himiko's heart clench in pain. Are you here to take me to that room? That room. What room? Himiko asked softly, causing Eri to tremble. The room where they cut me. No, sweetheart. Himiko got on the bed and brought Eri into a soft, warm hug. I'm not here to do anything like that. No, I'm here to save you. To take you away from here so that they never hurt you ever again. What? Eri whispered in shock as she felt Himiko's soft embrace. Eri's eyes began to tear up as she felt the softness of Himiko's touch. You're here to save me. And not just me. All of my friends are here to save you. We're not leaving this place unless you're with us. Himiko said with a wide smile as she picked up the girl. Hey you. Put her back. Himiko and Eri spun to the door to see Kai and Hari standing at the entrance of the door. With a glare, Kai slowly began to remove his right glove. Himiko glared at the two men and quickly placed Eri behind her defensively. Sliding her hand into her thigh holster, Himiko grabbed a small black ball that was glowing with cursed energy. Eri looked down and watched as Himiko snapped the ball in two. Put Eri back right now, Kai said in a low voice as he began walking toward Himiko with his hand raised. Suddenly, several muffled explosions began to shake the compound. This caused Kai and Hari to look around in suspicion. Did they plant bombs all over the compound? Hari yelled as everything rumbled around them, causing the ceiling to crack and the walls to shatter. No, Kai hissed before he zeroed in on the direction of the noise was coming from. Something is coming. With each new explosion, the explosions grew louder and louder before they were ear-shattering. Himiko grinned and brought Eri down before covering her with her body. Crack. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. Shooting out of the concrete wall, I quickly took in my surroundings and found Himiko holding Eri protectively. Sitting on the ground beside her was a small shattered ball. The ball itself was something I created with my construction technique. Within the ball was a hollow space I used to store some of my CE. Unfortunately, the stored CE could only last 10 hours before they needed to be refilled. Upon breaking one of them, the stored CE would burst out into a pulse I would be able to sense within a set distance. I had given Jin and Himiko each one of these balls in case either of them got into a life or death situation or if they ran into Overhaul during this mission. Looking to the right, I laid my eyes on Overhaul and Chronostasis. There you are, you germophobic bastard. I yelled as I rushed them both. It's you. Overhaul hissed as he tried to reach down to the floor. Beside him, Chronostasis pulled back his hood to reveal his hair. Just before they could launch their attacks, I raised my hand up and shot off several hundred small compact balls of fire with incredible speed to the point they resembled bullets. Acting quickly, both Overhaul and Chronostasis jumped back behind the door frame as my fire bullets collided through the walls. +15 SP. +15 SP. Go. Get Eri out of here. I told Himiko as I pointed to the large hole I had created with my explosive entrance. Not needing to be told twice, Himiko nodded and lifted Eri into her arms. Eri looked at me in wonder before she was whisked away. +25 SP. Moving on instinct, I leapt back as several spikes shot out from the floor in an attempt to skewer me. Not stopping there, the whole riddled wall in front of me rippled, and dozens of large concrete pillars launched toward me. Swiping my hands in front of me, I instantly created a thick shield made of wood and roots from below. A loud explosion of dust, wood, and stone flew in front of me as my defense took on Overhaul's attack. I can't lose sight of them, I muttered and leapt out of the large hole Himiko left a few seconds ago. As I turned the corner, I skidded to a stop just as Chronostasis was about to rush past me. He slammed his feet into the ground, halting his momentum to avoid getting any closer. But I was already charging forward with my right arm raised. Wham! My knuckles crashed through his plague mask and shattered it into pieces, sending shards into his skin and slicing his left eye. The man grunted in pain before I vanished from his sight. He was momentarily confused before he looked down to see my body low to the ground. With a wet smack, Chronostasis's head snapped to the right as I landed a powerful manji kick into the side of his head. The man flew across the hallway and crashed into the wall. Off in the back, Overhaul growled, seeing his right-hand man being dispatched so quickly. Sukuna, he muttered with rage. Why are you after Eri? I pulled off my hood and gave him a glare. I'm here to save her. Save her. Overhaul repeated with a stupefied voice. Since when does the demon god of the underworld save people? Have you decided to turn a new leaf and become one of those pathetic heroes? Nah, I'm no hero. Besides, I'm pretty sure real heroes wouldn't slaughter all of your men one by one. Or am I wrong? Hearing that, Overhaul didn't seem fazed by the revelation that his bullets and henchmen were all either dead or not. It matters not if my men are dead or alive. What matters is that I get Eri back. Bring her to me, and I'll let you and all of your partners live to fight another day. You make it sound as if you already won. I popped my neck and looked at him as if he were stupid. Look around you, Overhaul. You've lost. Your compound is in pieces, and all your men are scattered or dead. There's no version of this where you come out on top. The young Yakuza boss looked over at the knocked out or possibly dead Chronostasis with an unfocused look. Closing his eyes, Overhaul took a deep breath before he pulled out a gray gun with a green vial on top from out of his jacket. At nobleman at. That's. My eyes widened at the sight of the trigger drug in Overhaul's hand. Throughout my time as Sukuna, I had scarcely run into criminals who used the trigger drug in order to fight me. While the drug may have given them a significant power boost, it still wasn't enough for them to defeat me. However, in the hands of a man with an already super powerful quirk, the trigger drug could bolster his already broken abilities to an unimaginable level. Not willing to risk it, I moved in to stop the man. Unfortunately, he slapped his hand on the wall beside him and sent dozens of spikes towards me. If Chisaki, of all people, takes that drug, who knows what it could do to his quirk. I didn't want to do this, but I can't risk losing Eri. Not when I'm so close to perfecting the vaccine that will rid the world of this filth known as quirks. Overhaul said before stabbing the gun into the side of his neck. With a pull of the trigger, he injected himself with the drug. I won't be stopped. I won't stop before I rid this entire world of quirks. I raised my arms in front of me and pumped as much CE to reinforce my body as I could. In a flash, everything around me shattered and exploded. Chapter 46. No. 46 Sukuna vs. Overhaul. General Pav. Pillars of jagged concrete ripped through the twisting and warping hallway in an attempt to crush both Jin and twice cloned Sukuna. Despite the rolling environment, the two were somehow able to run away from the incoming pillars. Show yourself, you damn coward. We just want to say hello. Jin yelled. With incredible intensity, TC Sukuna's eyes scanned the ceiling, walls, and floors. His focused expression remained as he flipped over two rising boulders that jutted out in his path. As he spun in the air, TC Sukuna noticed a small, almost unnoticeable crack in the ceiling. There, TC Sukuna thought as he landed on the warping ground. Flexing his muscles, the clone used the warping environment to his advantage to quickly close the distance between himself and Iranaka Joy. Shit, he found me. Joy yelled as TC Sukuna was now only a few centimeters away. Crack. Everything around TC Sukuna, Jin, and Joy violently shook without warning, knocking the bullet out of the shattering ceiling and sending TC Sukuna and Jin onto the floor. Jin tried to push himself up when he noticed an incoming wave of spikes erecting from the walls, ceiling, and floor toward them in the now motionless hallway. Being the closest to the incoming wave of death, Joy's body was skewered from head to toe. The man wasn't even capable of screaming out in pain as a concrete spike shot out of his mouth. Jin. Turning his head, Jin watched as TC Sukuna dashed toward him. In an instant, the spikes reached Jin's position. XXX. With his large body crashing and shattering the walls around him, Katsukume Rikia continued running toward Overhaul's location. Rikia is a large, tall, and very muscular man. He wears a black tank top with a standby symbol in the middle. A pair of blue socks and orange sneakers adorned his feet as massive gauntlets and knuckle dusters rested over his fists. Finally, like the rest of his fellow bullets, a black plague mask sat over his face. I'm coming, boss, Rikia yelled as he smashed through an entire wall. With a tackle, the large man exploded out of two more concrete walls to arrive at a long hallway. Turning his head, Rikia saw his boss and Sukuna down the hall. Before he could rush toward his leader, Rikia saw Overhaul inject himself with the trigger drug. This can't be good, Rikia said as everything around him exploded. Rag. Roaring in pain, Rikia was stabbed with several sharp spikes that erupted from all around him. Ah, Katsukume. Rikia heard Overhaul say through the chaos and bellowing destruction. I need your strength as well, thank you for your sacrifice. Before he could question what he meant, Rikia looked down as a large, flesh-like arm stabbed through his chest. From within, Rikia felt hundreds of tendrils shoot through his body, sending unimaginable pain through him. As he released a silent scream, Rikia's consciousness vanished as his body was broken down. XXX. Throughout the battered and ruined Shihasaikai compound, several flesh-like tendrils with hands on the ends slithered throughout the building. It resembles an expanding bloodstream or root system below a large tree. Quickly, the hand tendrils found the corpses of Kendo, Hekiji, Diodoro, and Joy. Instantly, their bodies were broken down and absorbed into the tendrils. With their jobs done, the flesh tendrils returned to their main body. Kai's body. XXX. Must go faster. Must go faster. Hamiko screamed as she looked back at the incoming wave of spikes. Reaching the top of the stairs, she finally found a window leading outside. Without pause, Hamiko covered Eri's head and leapt out of the glass, shattering the window. Bracing herself, Hamiko fell down 2 stories with a roll just as spikes exploded out of the hallway she was once in. Wincing in pain, she quickly looked over at Eri. Seeing that the girl was safe, Hamiko ran again despite her aching ankle. Wait. We can't leave him. He'll die, Eri said with fear on her face as she watched the building that once trapped her explode into hundreds of pieces with giant jutting spikes rising high into the sky. Don't worry. Sukuna-kun is strong. He won't die here. He can't. Hamiko yelled as she ran toward the single hidden exit point on the surrounding wooden wall around the compound. Squeezing through it, Hamiko left the compound's premises and began running down the empty streets. Raising her arm, she waved it around wildly, sending a message to their overwatch. Kablam! Hearing Eri gasp loudly, Hamiko turned around and saw a giant monstrosity with several arms standing on 2 thick legs explode out of the compound. Jutting out of its back and arms were long, jagged bone spikes. On its thick neck was a massive bird-like head filled with razor-sharp teeth. However, inside the mouth was a shirtless, 6-armed man with brown hair. His red and black skin seemed to pulse with barely restrained power. It's him, Eri muttered in pure terror as Hamiko stepped back in shock at the enormous 15-meter-tall kaiju standing over the compound. As that, Overhaul. XXX. Off in her sniper's nest, Kana blinked in bewilderment as a giant monster exploded out from the compound alongside several large spikes. What is that? Refocusing her attention, Kana noticed Himiko waving at her from outside the wooden perimeter. Zooming in, she saw that the blonde now had their objective in her arms. Smiling, Kana leveled her scope around Himiko as she ran off with the child. Seeing no sign of Jin, Kana frowned and assumed the worst despite herself. Soda-san, Bubegawara-san, you two better be alright, Kana whispered as she watched over Himiko and Eri. XXX. Shaking his head, Jin blinked blearily as he awoke from his sleep. Looking around, he noticed he was hanging from one of his measuring tapes. The tape itself was tied to one of his katanas, and the sword itself was stabbed deep into one of the spikes that was jutting out of the ceiling. Soda. Jin muttered as he remembered what the TC Sukuna did to save him. Moving quickly, TC Sukuna grabbed Jin and pulled out his katana. Before he could ask what was going on, Jin was thrown over TC Sukuna's shoulder. From there, the clone moved in and out of the way from the onslaught of spikes with precision and skill. Despite his fast speed, they were both still sliced and stabbed by the passing spears of death, with TC Sukuna taking the brunt of it, causing his body to begin melting. Feeling his death come close, TC Sukuna made one last-ditch effort and pulled one of Jin's measuring tapes to tie to the katana's grip. With a roar, he stabbed it into one of the unmoving spikes just as he was stabbed through the chest. Due to the suddenness of the move, Jin's head and arm were knocked against a low-hanging pillar of stone from their earlier battle with Joy, knocking him out cold. Back in the present, Jin ignored his injuries and released his measuring tape, causing him to fall down onto the ground in a heap. Luckily, there was a wide enough gap of space where he landed, saving him from being skewered by the spikes lining the floor. Did Overhaul do this? Jin muttered as he tried to stand, only to stop when he felt pain burst out of his thigh and left arm. Looking down, he saw the tip of a thin stone spike stabbing through him. Turning to his arm, Jin's eyes grew wide in horror and then unimaginable relief when he saw he had a broken arm. I'm real. I'm not disappearing. I'm the real one. Jin yelled in happiness as he grasped his broken bone. Shaking his head, Jin stood to his feet and began limping through the hallway of spikes towards the loud sounds of battle in the distance. Hold on, Soda, I'm coming. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. With a grunt, I threw the large boulder off me and stood to my feet slowly. I was covered in cuts and blood as my black haori was ruined and tattered. Throwing it off, I looked up at the massive form of Overhaul's new monstrous body. Crap baskets. Crack. Using CE enhanced speed, I jumped to the side as one of Overhaul's large six arms punched the ground I once stood on, shattering the floor and sending rubble everywhere. Such power. One punch from that, and I'm a goner. What have you done, Overhaul? I roared, once again dodging a wild punch thrown by the Yakuza head. +10 SP. I've done my research on you, Sukuna. Overhaul bellowed from his position in his kaiju body's mouth. I know that you're not an opponent to take lightly. Your work on taking out Kobashagawa's entire regime is proof of that. There's even a rumor going around that you have more than one quirk. That's why I won't underestimate you. No, I'll use everything in my power to kill you right here. After I'm done with you, I'll find and take Eri back. Over my dead body. That's the plan, Overhaul said as he stomped toward me. I swung my arm up and sent several sharp roots up into Overhaul's stomach, sending blood splattering all over the floor. Not stopping there, I leapt up into the air and summoned two small volcano heads below the kaiju's position. With a flick of my wrist, two burning beams of lava shot up and knocked back Overhaul, burning and melting his already injured body. +5 SP. Stumbling forward in ruined and mangled limbs, Overhaul roared as he further destroyed his ruined body parts with his quirk. After a split second, he immediately fixed all the damage I'd done. Sukuna. Overhaul roared as his six large arms all swung at me wildly. I'll make you pay for everything you've done. New. Jumping on my Shikigami's back, I flew out of his range of attack. In an instant, a thin flesh tendril with a clock end on its tip shot out toward me and stabbed into Nu's wing. I watched in shock as Nu's movements slowed down to the point as if it was in slow motion. With no speed or momentum, we began to fall back into the ground. You can see Nu. I yelled as I brought Nu back into my shadows. You can actually see my Shikigami. But how? He shouldn't be able to. In order to slow my descent, I shot out a wave of fire at the ground. Just as I was about to land, the ground below shifted, and a massive concrete fist shot out from beneath me. I was only able to lift my arms defensively before I was bashed away. Pain shot up my back as my body collided with one of the compound's remaining walls. With a grunt, I pushed myself up and watched my blood drip onto the ground. Round D. Just as I was about to summon Round D in order to heal myself, my surroundings shifted and moved to create two massive walls at my sides. Within a second, they rushed toward me in an attempt to crush me. Gritting my teeth, I used projection sorcery to evade the incoming attack. Jumping out of their path, I heard a loud crack explode behind me as the two walls collided. Without pause, I sent a wave of fire at several arrow-shaped tendrils that tried to stab into me. He's not giving me a moment to breathe. At the sound of a roar, I turned to see Overhaul's large body stomping over to me. Raising all 6 of his arms, he slammed them down onto the ground. The floor all around him cracked and shattered as a wave of destruction sped toward me. Glaring at the incoming attack, I leapt up and summoned a long flowing root from the ground to catch me. Using the root, I had it move me away from the exploding shards of concrete. What is this? I felt my equilibrium inexplicably go out of whack, resulting in me slipping off my flowing root. Crashing onto the floor, I felt pain and vertigo overwhelming my body and senses. Lifting my head, I saw one of Overhaul's many arms pointing at me. This is Diodoro's quirk, I muttered and pushed past the effects of sloshed. But how does he have that quirk? Diodoro wasn't anywhere near us. If Overhaul has Diodoro's quirk, then could he also have the other bullet's abilities as well? But when did he fuse with them? Overhaul grinned down at me, but his head snapped to the side as his actual lower jaw exploded by a speeding pink and indigo bullet. With his focus thrown off, I felt the effects of sloshed disappear. Looking over to where Kana was, I gave the woman a massive grin. I owe you one. Running out of Overhaul's line of sight, I brought my hands up and held my right hand to my side. Fire burst alive all around me as the broken and shattered remains of the compound gathered together into the sky above in a beautiful, fiery sphere. Maximum output. I leapt up into the sky, causing the burning ball of flames to burst with power. Overhaul fixed his face and turned to me with rage in his crazed eyes. Maximum meteor. With a swing, I launched the meteor straight at Overhaul with a grin. Despite not having enough time to make the attack as big as I wanted, I knew it would be enough to land some considerable damage, if not kill the man. +25 SP. Overhaul was surprised at the sight of the large burning meteor, but he quickly roared and raised his arms to deploy a giant barrier around him. Unfortunately for him, his barrier stood no chance and shattered once my attack struck it. Unwilling to give up, Overhaul held all 6 hands out and grabbed hold of the meteor. With a ground-shaking roar, he began to slowly push the meteor back. Rog! Overhaul yelled as his kaiju body began to burn and disintegrate from the intense heat. Before I could launch my next attack, I saw several cracks appear over the meteor's surface. In a flash of fire, the meteor broke apart as Overhaul used his quirk to shatter it to pieces. At Nobleman at. Leaning forward, Overhaul broke down his burnt arms and quickly repaired them. From behind him, several bullets began to rain over his back from Kana's sniper. Turning his large head in her direction, Overhaul created several considerable golden barriers around his back to defend himself from the bullets. Due to his new defense, the bullets ended up changing course to different parts of his vast body. Growling in irritation, Overhaul grabbed a large chunk of concrete the size of a small house and hurled it toward Kana's sniper nest. No. Using disaster flames, I launched a concentrated spear of fire that knocked the chunk of concrete slightly off course, causing it to collide with the middle of the building Kana was on top of. With a loud explosion, the building began to crack and break as it leaned on its side. Squinting, I saw Kana use jello to slow her fall from the falling rooftop. +20 SP. You damn brat. Overhaul spun to me and stomped one of his thick feet onto the ground. Using his quirk, Overhaul sent dozens of massive spikes that tried to skewer me. I don't have time for this. With CE enhanced speed, I managed to evade the majority of the incoming spikes, but one of them managed to snag me on my side. This isn't working. Nothing I'm doing is having any effect. If I don't stop him soon, I'll run out of CE. He may be able to fix any of the damage I do to him, but how about if I freeze him into a block of ice instead? Switch. I said as I exchanged disaster plants for ice formation. This better work. Seeing as how I wasn't reduced into a bloodied mess from his attack, Overhaul growled and stomped towards me with his 6 large arms ready to smash me to paste. Raising both of my palms in front of my mouth, I blew out a large gust of ice. Maximum output. Ice Age Prison. The air around us became unbelievably cold, resulting in the floor beneath us frosting over. From all around Overhaul's large kaiju body, enormous chunks of ice came into existence and quickly expanded all over his body. Plus 30 SP. Growling, he continued to fight his way towards me despite his growing ice prison. Finally, the large building-sized ice formation enveloped all of Overhaul's kaiju body, leaving him frozen in place just in time as his right hand was only a few meters away from my position. Plus 50 SP. Finally. Hey, I was worried I was going to have to summon Mahoraga for a second there. Falling to a knee, I felt my low reserves of CE catch up with me. As low as they were, I was unable to summon round deer to heal myself. I looked down at my stomach, where the tip of a concrete spear was stabbing through me. Reaching over at the flowing blood from my wound, I grimaced while I debated whether to take it out or not. Soda. A bloodied and injured Jin limped out from around a large chunk of rubble. He then roared out in a panicked voice. Move. Without hesitation, I forced my body to move, but it was too late. A muscled arm shot out from a small crack in the ice formation that encased Overhaul's kaiju arm from right in front of me. The arm bulged and swelled before it stretched out toward me. In a flash, the arm's hand grabbed onto my right wrist. Die. Overhaul said with a large grin from within the ice. My eyes grew wide as I felt something very wrong begin to spread from my wrist up my arm. Gritting my teeth, I coated my left hand with CE and sliced off my arm from the bicep down. Leaping back, I watched as my bisected arm exploded from within Overhaul's hand. Plus 15 SP. Fuck. That was close. Sliding to a stop, I looked over at my bleeding stump of an arm and winced. Using my binding vow, I switched out disaster flames for blood manipulation in order to stop the blood. Down to 2 techniques. Breaking out of his ice prison, a much smaller Overhaul landed on the ground with a crack. Standing at a height of 396 centimeters, Overhaul's once lanky body was lined with large, powerful muscles. Much like his kaiju form, he now had reddish-black skin with 3 arms on each side of his torso. Over his shoulders and his back were several large pair of eyes that stared at me with rage. Jutting out of his elbows, knees, and back were large, sharp bone spikes. You sacrificed your own arm for your survival, Overhaul said through his moving plague mask. As he spoke, it sounded as if several different people were speaking at once. You're only prolonging your inevitable death. I remained silent as I glared at him. This is far from enough to stop me, you child-abusing piece of shit. Plus 5 SP. What I did to Eri was all in the name of progress. Overhaul lifted his arms up with an excited expression. Once I rid this world of the deceased known as quirks, we can all return to how things once were. You're a madman. I spat out, feeling lightheaded. I'm going to kill you for everything you've done to Eri. I'll make you suffer 100-fold. Please, Overhaul scoffed. I can see that you're barely able to stand on your feet. He noticed. By the way, I could practically feel the grin on Overhaul's face as his many eyes looked over to a worried and injured Jin. The man was leaning heavily against a chunk of rock as the tip of a spike stuck out of his thigh. I think I should return the favor from when you took out my subordinates, don't you think? Soda. Kneeling down, Overhaul placed one of his hands on the ground. Bombarding out of the floor, several large spikes sprang toward the masked man. Shit. Fuck. Shit. Throwing all of my remaining CE into projection sorcery, I glitched towards Jin. Each new appearance of mine accelerated my speed even further. Be faster. Save him. No matter what. Using my remaining arm, I all but launched Jin across the ruins of the compound. SHNK. And no, Jin muttered as he pushed himself up, tears pooled around his eyes. No. Grinning, I gave my friend a weak thumbs up. Below me, several sharp spikes penetrated throughout my body. Locations such as the side of my neck, my left shoulder, my chest, and my left knee were all stabbed with a thick concrete spike. Against my will, I felt my eyelids force themselves close over my eyes as my body began to grow cold. From around my shoulders, Zyko groaned and wrapped itself tightly around me as if to comfort me. Run, Jin. Get out of here. Plus 999 SP. XXX. General Pav. Tired and covered in sweat, Himiko paused in her run, the sudden feeling of dread spread over her chest. Holding Eri closer to herself, Himiko turned around and heard a faint yell behind her that sounded like Jin. Hearing the far-off yell as well, Eri whimpered and buried her head into Himiko's neck. This is all my fault, Eri whispered. Sukuna-kun. Himiko uttered, her gaze focused on the disappearing veil in the distance. Chapter 47. No. 47 Save her. No matter what. General Pav. Kai watched as Jin held his head in his hands. The masked man was crying hysterically as he rocked himself back and forth on the ground. At the sight of the pathetic man, Kai disregarded Jin as a threat. Soda. No, you can't. Is this my fault? Soda. All my fault. Standing still, Kai carefully eyed Soda's still body. Crimson streamed freely down the spikes that were embedded into his body, flowing into the large puddle below him. Ripples pulsed out with every new drop of blood that fell. Satisfied that the so-called king of curses was dead, Kai turned to the direction he had last seen Himiko and Eri run off to. Bending his knees, the head of the Shi Hasaikai leapt into the air and landed on a far-off rooftop. With incredible ease, he began sprinting and jumping from rooftop to rooftop toward the key to his future. You're not going anywhere, Eri. XXX. Thanks, Jello, Kana muttered as she rolled off the jellyfish Shikigami. With a grunt, she looked around the huge pile of rubble behind her from where the building collapsed. Scanning over at the nearby buildings, Kana turned around and pointed at a nearby rooftop that overlooked the ruined compound. Jello, can you fly me up there? I need to. Kana's eyes grew wide in confusion as she watched the jellyfish Shikigami slowly began to disappear. Jello. The Shikigami released a low moan as it finally disappeared. Wait. Don't tell me. Kana gasped and began sprinting toward the compound, her expression tight and panicked. How could someone destroy my Shikigamis? Soda said as he placed some more barbecue into his mouth. Well, the only way that could happen is to exorcise them with CE. But considering I'm the only one with that power, that's not really a concern. Another way would be if I'm either knocked out or killed. That could force them to be dispelled for a short amount of time. Even then, I'm not too sure if they would disappear. Well, except for Jello. It seems to run off my CE like a leech. So if I do get taken out, Jello would probably disappear. But I doubt anybody besides a scant few could do the job. At Nobleman at. Glaring ahead, Kana quickened her pace as she jumped over a fallen piece of rubble. With practiced ease, she parkoured over and around the scattered piles of spikes and chunks of concrete around the compound. Hearing hushed sobs, Kana quickened her pace and turned the corner. It can't be, Kana muttered as she slowed to a stop. Her eyes trained on the still, skewered body of the young man she had grown to respect deeply. Underneath him was a large puddle of blood. Soda-san. Looking to her right, she noticed Jin wallowing away while muttering incomprehensibly to himself. Despite her few short weeks living together with Soda, Jin, and the incredibly touchy Himiko, Kana had sincerely enjoyed her time with the three oddballs. Living with them had made her almost forget her bloody past. Every day during their daily meals together, Kana had wondered if this was what it would be like if she pursued a different path in her life. A path where she surrounded herself with close friends or family. A path devoid of bloodshed and murder. It was lovely. And now it was gone. Even if she and everyone else managed to escape alive, the glue that held Himiko and Jin together was now dead and gone. Things wouldn't be the same again. Stepping up to Soda's body, Kana hesitated but ultimately closed his half-lidded eyes. Reaching out to Zyko, she picked up the worm and placed it around her own shoulders. Taking a deep breath, she walked away from Soda and approached Jin. Bubegawara-san, Kana said in a cold, detached voice. A voice she had grown used to hearing during her time in the HPSC. Walking over to the man, she reached down and grabbed his shoulder. Get up. We still have a mission to complete. I can't, Jin muttered, his hands over his head. Soda is. He's dead, Kana-chan. He's dead. I know, Kana whispered. Kneeling beside him, she grabbed his face and lifted his head so he could look at her. But we still need to save Eri-chan. Remember. It's what Soda-san would want. We have to help that little girl. Do you understand? Sniffing, Jin closed his eyes and collected himself. After a few seconds, he ignored all his injuries and forced himself to stand up. Brushing his arm over his eyes, Jin wiped the tears off his face. Why, you're right. Let's go save Eri-chan. Nodding, Kana bandaged Jin's thigh and placed his arm in a sling before they began running off toward where she had last seen Himiko head in. As she ran, Kana turned back to look at Soda's unmoving form. Goodbye. With no one left around, no one was there to notice the ripples on the blood puddle's surface quicken until they came to a complete stop below Soda's body. Inexplicably, the ripples began to invert. XXX. Several blocks away, Dozens of people were walking toward their evacuation zone, guided by police officers wearing bored expressions. Ha! What a pain. One of the traveling civilians said with a groan as she wiped some sweat off her neck. Beside her, another young woman nodded. Shouldn't they have warned us ahead of time we were supposed to have an evacuation drill? I know, right? Like, shouldn't they be more considerate or something? The brown-haired young woman said with an eye roll. Keep it moving, everyone. An officer with sharp teeth and green eyes said as he directed the large marching crowd forward. Remember, act as if this was the real deal. Standing next to a bookstore at a nearby intersection, Detective Yoichi and one of his subordinates stood beside one another, watching the annoyed crowds walking down the street. Hey, Detective Ige, I don't mean to question you or anything, but why are we doing this? A young man with slicked back black hair said. I told you already, Kurihara-kun. Yoichi took a drag of his cigarette and then blew out a puff of smoke. This was simply a precaution. We got a call about a bomb threat. But from the sound of the caller's voice, that call was clearly a joke. If it was clearly a joke, is evacuating 12 city blocks full of people really necessary? Kurihara said as he motioned at the agitated people and even some police officers. I can't believe the chief okayed this. That's because he didn't, Yoichi thought as he looked away. Kabang! Suddenly, a powerful tremor rocked the city all around them, causing all the evacuating people and officers to momentarily lose their balance. Off in the distance, smoke and chunks of concrete flew up into the sky. As the structures fell, several more tremors shook the city, causing waves of panicked screams through the civilians. What was that? Holy shit. Was that an actual bomb? I thought this was a drill. Where are the heroes? Detective Yoichi watched the rising pillars of smoke with wide eyes. Damn it, Sukuna. What the hell is going on over there? Yoichi screamed in his head as he heard several officers begin to call in the situation. There were even some calls being made to bring in some support from heroes. Whatever you're doing, do it fast, Sukuna. Detective, we need to get these people out of here. Right, let's get moving. XXX. It's okay, Eri-chan. Everything's going to be okay. Hamiko forced herself to smile as she continued running through the empty city streets. She winced as her swollen ankle sent waves of pain up her leg. Eri looked up at Hamiko with worry as she continued looking behind them. Her large red eyes scanned the streets below before moving up to the rooftops. A wave of terror shot through her as she spotted a six-armed creature with a plague mask staring down at her with rage in his eyes. He's here, Eri whispered. Pulling on Hamiko's shirt, Eri pointed behind them in a panic. He's here. He's here. Feeling as if a bucket of ice had spilled over her, Hamiko stopped running and spun around. Looking up to where Eri was pointing, Hamiko found Kai looking down at them. Glaring at him, she forced herself to continue running. He won't get you, Eri-chan. I promise. No. That's enough, Eri muttered. Just let me go, or he'll kill you too. And no. No one's dead, Hamiko yelled as she ignored her injured ankle. I'll save you. Just watch me. Admirable. Feeling a wave of nausea come over her, Hamiko's sense of balance turned upside down, causing her to trip and roll on the ground. With blurry vision, Hamiko looked down at Eri and double-checked to see if she was okay. Eri-chan, Hamiko said as she tried to stand, but her body and mind continued to sway. It's okay. I'll protect you. The two girls spun around as a loud crash rumbled behind them. Looking back, Hamiko and Eri watched as Kai slowly stood to his full height. Eri began to shake as she took in his new, more terrifying form. Eri, Kai muttered coldly. Come here. Stay back, you six-armed piece of shit. Hamiko growled out as she stood up despite the overpowering nausea. Reaching behind her, Hamiko brought out her blunted weapon as she stood in front of Eri protectively. Where is he? Where's Sukuna-kun? Ah, were you too close? Kai said with amusement in his golden eyes. Sota tried to stand in my way, so I killed him. Hamiko's expression fell into disbelief and despair before she closed her eyes. Shaking her head, her eyes narrowed into slits as she glared with as much hate as she could muster at Kai. No, you're lying. Hamiko roared with tears running down her face. He's not dead. You're lying. Sighing in annoyance, Kai dismissed Hamiko and began walking over to Eri. Enough of this. It's time to come back, Eri. Unless you want this girl to die as well. I don't want that, Eri said in defeat. She began to walk over to Kai, causing Hamiko to look at her in surprise. Eri-chan, please, just go. I don't want you to die too, Eri said as she began walking toward Kai. Her small hands gripped the fabric of her long dress. Forget about me. I don't think so. Gasping in exhaustion, Jin marched towards Kai with his expression set into a rage. Himiko, Eri, and Kai turned to watch Jin come to a stop from the other end of the street. You're still here? Kai asked in annoyance. I am. I won't forgive you for what you did. Jin roared as he pointed a finger at Kai. But I promise you this. We will save that little girl. No matter what. You've seen what I can do, Kai said as he motioned to himself. I've defeated the so-called demon god. Tell me, what can you do? Jin huffed angrily and pointed up to the sky. That, Kai, Himiko, and Eri all looked up at the rooftops to see over 50 Kana clones all aiming down their snipers at Kai with fire behind their eyes. And this, Jin yelled as a large wave of black liquid exploded behind him. Rising out of the goo, dozens upon dozens of Jin clones sprang to life. Their eyes were set into a frenzy as they glowered at Kai. Sad man's parade. Before Kai could react, the sky rained down a volley of death. Chapter 48. No. 48 Awakening of the Fallen. Anne, a quick word from me before we get into the heat of things. It seems that there has been a lot of negative feedback in the last few chapters regarding the flow of events and character decisions. I was going to write a long list of why I did what I did, but that would be pointless. My reasoning over why the events from the overhaul fight happened the way they did is in the writing. Whether some of you are able to comprehend. That isn't something I can help. Backquote. If you decide to drop the story because Soda isn't some omnipresent, overpowered, emotionless, super genius, perfect protagonist, that's okay. I'm sure you'll find another story on webnovel that will tickle your fancy. For all of you who are enjoying my story for what it is, thanks for your continued support and comments. It's what keeps me writing. Now then, without further ado, let's get on with the show. General Pav. Bubegawara Jin's quirk was called Double. It was a quirk that allowed Jin to create an exact duplicate of anything, living or not. To duplicate something, he first needs to know its precise measurements and characteristics. When they receive enough damage, the clones Jin creates will disappear. However, instead of disappearing into nothing, they decayed into a mud-like substance. The duplicates created were less durable than the original, and the second duplicate was even less durable than the first. This continues with each new copy made by a copy. When Jin creates a duplicate of a person, he personally has no control over the clones because they have their own autonomy, personalities, and abilities that are utterly identical to the original. Take this. My ultimate attack. Jin yelled as he pointed a finger at Kai. Sad man's parade. Up on the rooftops, the small legion of Kana clones all lifted their rifles and fired their weapons at the momentarily stunned head of the Yakuza. Bullets rained down on Kai, with dozens of loud cracks filling the sky. What is this? Is this your quirk? Kai yelled as he raised a golden barrier over him to defend himself from the hail of bullets. Due to the constant onslaught of powerful gunfire, the barrier over Kai began to crack fast until it shattered. Dashing to the side, Kai evaded the wave of bullets, but a few shots struck true. Grunting in pain, Kai quickly broke down and repaired his tattered arms, sending a wave of excruciating pain through him, as his quirk always did whenever he used it on himself. Damn pests. Kai spat out. You're the pest. A small army of Jin clones dashed toward Kai with anger in their eyes. Yeah, we're gonna kick your ass until there's nothing left. Another clone roared as he drew out his katanas. Several yells of agreement rumbled through the crowd of clones. I'm going to shove my sword up your ass. Let's give him the people's elbow. Spit in his cereal. Running at high speeds, several clones leapt at Kai and swung down their respective weapons. Glaring at the large number of clones, Kai swiped 3 arms at the nearest group. As his fingers brushed past the clones' bodies, Kai activated his quirk, forcing them to explode violently. Looking down, Kai growled in annoyance as a mud-like substance poured over the ground from where he killed the 7 clones. They're not made of flesh and blood. Kai thought. Those barriers of his are tricky. A Kana clone said as she tore off a strand of her hair to turn it into a long bullet. Loading it into her arm, she raised her sniper and adjusted her aim. Even so, I'll make you pay for what you did, you piece of shit. Bang, bang, bang. Moving back to dodge another wave of bullets, the young head was given no time to collect himself as he was either assaulted by a hail of bullets or a swarm of Jin clones. Down the street, away from the battle, Himiko seized the opportunity and snatched up the surprised Eri from the ground despite her mental turmoil. It's time to go, Eri-chan. What about them? Eri asked as Himiko limped away from the battle. They'll be okay. We just have to. I don't think so. Kai yelled as he pressed his hands onto the ground. Within seconds, an expanding wave of huge spikes erupted from the ground, skewering several incoming waves of Jin clones and destroying the surrounding buildings into pieces. The Kana clones above tried to move back before they toppled down with their respective perches, but only half of them were successful in retreating into safety. Shit. The original Kana muttered as she ran behind the alleyways, catching glimpses of the destruction Kai caused with a single move. Behind her, the original Jin did his best to keep up despite his injured thigh. This fucker is strong. He was a lot stronger before, Jin said between huffs. Soda was able to force him into the form he's in now. I don't think we'd stand a chance against that monster form of his. Hold on. Can he still turn into that? Let's hope not. Kana and Jin turned the corner and continued running. But taking down Overhaul isn't our objective. It's getting Eri-chan out of here. Exiting the alley, Kana looked around and spotted Himiko and Eri struggling to get away across the street. Himiko-chan. Over here. Hurry. Kana yelled as she looked down the street, where hundreds of Jin clones rushed Kai despite being obliterated. Up above, the remaining Kana clones fired off rapid-fire shots at the six-armed man. We need to use this distraction while it lasts. At this rate, it won't be long before he runs out of clones to kill. Kana Onichan. Jin-kun. Himiko smiled as she dashed toward her two friends from behind the car they were using as cover. We're using our backup escape route. Kana told Himiko as she and Eri reached them. Holding her arms out, Himiko handed Eri to Kana. Move fast and stay low. Let's go. Right. Feeling a far-off explosion rumble through the streets, the four began moving once again. As they traveled through the streets using the chaos as cover, Himiko approached Jin with an anxious expression. Jin-kun, Himiko said in a small voice, causing Jin to look away. Is it true? Is Sukuna-kun. It's true, Jin muttered. Soda is. He's gone, Toga-chan. He died. Saving my life. It's all my fault. I'm so sorry. Himiko's expression became crestfallen as she fought back a sob. It's not your fault, Jin-kun. It's not anyone's fault but Overhaul's. I swear, I'll kill him one day. I'll gut him. I'll make him pay for what he did. Pick up the pace, you two. We don't have a lot of time. Crack. A large wall made of concrete and asphalt rose in front of the four, causing Eri's eyes to widen in terror as she realized they'd been found. Kana cursed as she turned back to watch Kai walking over to them, his body covered in sliding mud. But what caught her attention was his burning golden eyes piercing at her. No, he's not looking at me, Kana muttered as Himiko and Jin stood in front of both her and Eri. That bastard won't stop at nothing to get Eri-chan back. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. Turn a negative into a positive. Multiply negative cursed energy by itself. Combine them. Smash them together. ... There it is. The core. Grab it. Hold on to it. Make it yours. ... Finally. The reverse curse technique. Blinking. My surroundings slowly came into focus. I looked down and saw several concrete spikes stabbing deeply into my body. Using my only remaining arm, I pushed myself free and stumbled back. Due to the blood loss, my knees gave out from under me. I looked down at the bleeding holes within my body and transformed my remaining curse energy into positive energy. Slowly, I began to heal myself with RCT, just to the point where I wouldn't die. Unfortunately, I didn't have enough left over to heal my arm back. As my body healed and my blood recovered, I reached up and ripped off my bloodied white kimono top and tight black shirt, leaving me shirtless. When I was sufficiently healed, I stood up on wobbly legs and stared at my newly healed but still bloodied body. Despite feeling the effects of CE exhaustion, I couldn't help but feel extraordinary. How wonderful, I muttered with a smile. My mind feels so clear. Looking up, I enjoyed the feeling of the wind on my face. Was this what Gojo felt? Once I felt my lightheadedness disappear, I finally noticed the floating screen in front of me, and a crazy grin stretched across my face at what I read. Congratulations on receiving over 900 SP in one go. You have unlocked a limited time event. Any of your draws will now have an added 45% chance of winning one of your chosen tier's highest level prizes. Time remaining on event. 0 hours 0 minutes and 55 seconds. Nothing says gacha like a limited time event. Snapping my fingers, I summoned my gacha system and checked my current points. Total SP. 7,491. Use 3,500 SP, I spun the dial and waited. With a satisfying click, the gacha machine's lid flipped open to reveal a glowing prize ball. Lifting it tenderly, I snapped open the lid and grinned. You have pulled Okatsu Yuta's curse energy reserves. Rank Platinum. Without wasting another second, I immediately equipped Yuta's reserves of cursed energy, restoring all of my lost energy and fueling myself with the second largest reserves of CE from all of JJK. With so much CE at my disposal, I felt an incredible boost of power fill me, further boosting my current high. If I were to compare Tsukumu Yuki's CE reserves with Okatsu Yuta's, it would be like comparing a kiddie pool with a large pond. This is amazing. This won't do, I muttered, raising my right bisected arm. Immediately, a burst of steam rose out of my bicep as bone, flesh, blood, and skin grew. Flexing my new right arm, I grinned widely with euphoria. Better. Ha ha. Again. Use 3500 SP. Opening square bracket ... You have pulled Ryomen Sukuna's cursed technique, Shrine. Rank Platinum. At the sight of one of my most highly sought after techniques after I first received my gacha system, I began to chuckle. That chuckle soon turned to a small giggle before becoming full-blown laughter. The heavens must be smiling upon me today. I yelled as I held my arms up and danced over my own spilled blood, splashing and spreading the crimson liquid around me while my tattoos burned to life. At Nobleban at. Now then. Time for round 2. Turning my head, I listened and watched the chaos and destruction in the distance shake the surrounding area. With a grin, I brushed back my hair and stared up at the smoke-filled blue sky. Switch. XXX. General Pav. Enough of these petty tricks. Kai roared as he slammed all his hands on the ground. I'll just rip you all to shreds. I'll fix Eri once you're all dead. Incoming. Jin yelled in panic as a wave of spikes rushed them. Running forward, Jin sent out a massive group of clones to try and slow down the wave of death. Unfortunately, the legions of clones were only able to slightly slow down the onslaught of rushing spikes. Kana Onichan. Take Eri and run. Hamiko yelled as she swung her blunted sword onto the wall, using the blade's imbued technique to break a small but large enough hole in the wall behind them. Go. Hurry. We'll slow him down. You're asking me to leave you both to die. Kana yelled in disbelief as she held Eri tighter to her chest, causing the crying girl to cover her head with her hands. There's no way you two can slow that down. Just stop it. Let me go, and you all won't die. Eri yelled in despair as the wave of spikes finally neared them all. No one's dying today, a cold but calm voice said as a bloodied and shirtless figure blurred in between them all and the incoming wave of death. Hamiko, Jin, Eri, and Kana watched in disbelief as a completely healed Sota swiped his right arm to the side. Dismantle. Chapter 49. No. 49 Sukuna vs. Overhaul. Round 2. Dismantle. The incoming wave of spikes instantly crumbled into thousands of tiny cubes as my invisible attack sliced through the air. My attack had also cut through the sides of the buildings around us. Off down the street, Overhaul stood in bewilderment as his golden eyes stared into my own. Plus 65 SP. Plus 35 SP. Plus 15 SP. Plus 45 SP. Plus 55 SP. It can't be. You're alive. Yup. Still alive and kicking. I grinned at the six-armed man and waved my newly healed right arm. I even grew myself a new arm. Pretty neat, ain't it? Plus 35 SP. Impossible. Overhaul glared at me as he scanned my body. How is this possible? Do you have some healing quirk as well? Nope. It's called the reverse cursed technique. I motioned to my healed body, then pointed at my head with a crazed smile. You should have chopped my head off or broken me down. Now, you're going to lose, Chisaki. Plus 50 SP. I'm going to lose. Chisaki looked offended at my use of his name and began walking toward me. No, I'm going to obliterate you until there's not even a single atom of you left. Behind me, Hamiko and Jin looked at me in shock and joy while Kana stood in disbelief. Eri, who wasn't familiar with me, just stared at my back with surprise. Around Kana's shoulders, Zyko looked at me with relieved, derpy eyes. Is that really you, Sukuna-kun? Hamiko asked in a small, scared voice. As if afraid, she was currently hallucinating what she was seeing. It can't be, Kana muttered as Jin rubbed his eyes. I saw your body with my own eyes. You were dead. Sota. Jin asked. Yup, it's me. Sorry about that little scare back there. I said without turning around, my focus aimed at Chisaki. I swiped my hand behind me and sent a dismantle at the large wall behind the four. My attack swiftly shattered the concrete wall into pieces, leaving them all room to escape unimpeded. Now, you all need to get out of here. I'll handle things from here. +25 SP. +55 SP. +36 SP. +50 SP. You can't, Eri said as she made Kana place her on the ground. Turning back, I looked at the small, scared girl with a tender smile. I had to struggle to hold my manic grin away so I wouldn't unsettle Eri. He's too strong. You'll die. This is enough. I'll go back to him. I don't want any of you to die. Not for someone like me. The girls, right, Shisaki said as he continued walking towards us. Give her back, and I'll consider showing you all a modicum of merc. Slice. Suddenly, the bottom half of Shisaki's body was cut in half. With no lower body support, the head of the Hasaikai fell onto the ground in shock. Blood and organs splashing below him. The man gasped in pain as he looked down at his sliced body. Be quiet, trash. I ignored Shisaki and walked over to Eri. Kneeling down beside her and Kana, I placed a comforting hand on Eri's head. It's okay, Eri. I'm not going to die. We all came here to save you, which means we won't stop until you're safe and sound. Now, big sis Kana here is going to take you somewhere safe, okay? But, no buts. I smiled and brushed her uncombed hair back with a grin, compelling the girl to look up at me with large, hopeful eyes. Just leave this to your big brother, Soda. +30 SP. Rising up, I looked over to Kana's expression and saw that she was in a state of disbelief and doubt. Reaching out, I placed a hand on her shoulder, cementing the fact that I was indeed standing in front of her. It's really me. Sorry about the scare back then. But right now isn't really the time for explanations. I turned back to watch as Chisaki finished restoring his lower body. You all need to get out of here. Now. +15 SP. Okay. Kana nodded and placed a hand over my own. I'll hold you to that. We won't. Hamiko yelled as tears ran down her face. I won't just leave you here to die. I can't go through that again. Smiling at the blonde, I walked over to her and hugged her. I'm sorry about scaring you, Hamiko. But trust me, I won't lose. I'll never lose again. Turning to Jin, I grinned at him before placing a finger on Hamiko's forehead, much to her confusion. Using precise curse energy control, I painlessly knocked her out. Sliding my arms under her slumbering body, I handed her off to Jin, who struggled to carry her over his shoulder despite his broken arm. Don't worry, bro. I got this. +40 SP, added Nobleman at. Jin stared at my face for several seconds before nodding. Okay. You better win, then. Otherwise, Toga-chan will bring you back just so she can kill you herself. Don't worry, I know. I nodded as I walked away from the four of them. With nothing more to be said, Kana picked Eri up, and the four of them began speeding down the street. As they fled, Shisaki and I restarted our little staring contest before I gave the man a grin. Sorry about the hold up. That was really considerate of you to give my friends and me time to talk. Shisaki glowered at me as he flexed his arms. Consider it a parting gift. Once I'm done with you, I'll find them and kill them all before taking Eri back. As that's so, I rubbed the back of my head and gave him an amused look. Well then, let's get started. Shall we? Dashing toward him, I slammed a fist straight into his stomach with incredible power. Shisaki's eyes bulged out of his head as he flew back through one of the buildings behind him with a loud crack, sending rubble and dust all around him. Whoa, that wasn't even a full-powered strike. Not bad. Is this what one can do with such large reserves of cursed energy? I looked down at my hands and laughed. How incredible. Jumping back, I avoided several pillars of concrete from crushing me. The apartment building beside me shattered into chunks before reconstructing into a massive fist with spikes for knuckles. The first flew through the air and smashed into me, sending me flying through the air. Impressive. With this level of reinforcement, an attack like that is laughable. From below, Shisaki shot out of the roof of a business building using a quickly rising pillar beneath him. Raising one of his arms, he tried to use Diodoro's quirk, sloshed, on me. Only to watch as his arm flew off him with a clean cut. Gay. Shisaki groaned. Hurts, doesn't it? +25 SP. I grinned and moved to the side as he tried to grab me. Swiping my left arm, I watched as a large cut appeared on his chest, sending blood through the air. With an application of his quirk, Shisaki healed his injuries and combined all three of his right arms into one massive appendage. With a wide swing, he tried to punch me down to the ground with a heavy punch. Spinning in midair, I watched as his large fist flew past me in slow motion. Using a punch of my own, I knocked his large arm away and sent a volley of dismantles all over his body. Blood and flesh flew around Shisaki as he was sliced to shreds. The ground, buildings, cars, and whatever else was below us ended up being torn to shreds as well. Such power, I muttered with a euphoric smile. +10 SP. You bastard. Shisaki roared as he put his body back together just before he slammed into a building, destroying the structure. From below the wreckage, Shisaki made an expression of pure rage as he placed all four of his hands on the floor. After landing on the ruined ground, I sent several slashes toward the massive incoming waves of jagged spikes, effectively destroying them in one move. Before I could sprint after him, Shisaki erupted a large barrier around me in an effort to trap me. How amusing. I looked around me as the streets and buildings all began to twist and warp like a tornado around me, trapping me within its urban structure. I grinned at the sight as the solid whirlwind erupted spikes from the inside. It was at that moment the barrier that was supposedly keeping me contained disappeared, and the tornado of death shrank, ready to slice me to shreds like a giant blender. Sliding my hands in my pockets, I commanded several hundred dismantle slashes to dance around me in a speeding circle to act as my own impromptu barrier, cutting and slicing all the spikes that spun around me before they ever had a chance of getting near me. Smiling, I swiped both of my arms to the side and watched as the solid concrete tornado split in two. As both halves fell with an earth-shaking crash, I looked out and saw Chisaki staring at me in disbelief. Why won't you die? He yelled before using a pillar to launch himself at me. Standing in place, I aimed my left hand at him as my right hand rested over my forearm. Slice, 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 slice. Shisaki and everything behind him were all instantly destroyed into chunks, slabs, and debris as my onslaught of dismantles obliterated everything within half a block. Flying in midair, Shisaki's decapitated head flipped around, and his scattered body parts flew all around him. With a low, monstrous roar, he somehow pulled his entire being back together into one. Sukuna. Shisaki's scream pierced through the sky as his voice reverberated everywhere around us. What are you? Me. I answered with a grin. I'm your executioner. Rog. Shisaki yelled as he forced his body to transform back into the kaiju form from before. However, unlike before, he was much smaller. Seeing this, he stretched several flesh tendrils into the ground and fused the concrete, metal pipes, and whatever else he could grab into himself in the act of desperation, increasing his size and power. Doing this caused Shisaki to roar in pain. Getting desperate, are we? I mocked as I leapt over the crumbling city streets. With an ear-splicing crack, Shisaki's disfigured kaiju form dug into the road below and lifted an entire street above his head. With a heave, he launched it at breakneck speeds at me despite the large size of the structure. Just as it was about to slam into me, I pointed a double finger gun at the side of the structure. Scale of the dragon. Recoil. Twin meteors. I chanted with a small smile. Dismantle. Slash. Shisake stood in shock as the massive chunk of concrete, asphalt, rock, and dirt was split cleanly in half. The young Yakuza head was unprepared when my attack continued onward and sliced him and everything behind and around him in two. My empowered dismantle continued onward, causing all the buildings within half a city block to split in two, causing the structures to collapse and shatter from the stress. To think this is only around half of what Sukuna was capable of. How frightening. +85 SP. Screaming in pain, Shisaki grabbed his bisected kaiju body and forced himself back together. Falling to his knees, Shisaki panted as his thrown projectile crashed back onto the ground, releasing a loud explosion through the streets and sending shockwaves everywhere. This resulted in the buildings surrounding me still intact and the windows behind me shattering. It hurts so much. Shisaki groaned as he held his real body from within his kaiju's mouth. I can't keep putting myself back together. My mind, will shatter. I told you, didn't I? I said as I landed on the large pile of rubble from the thrown upheaved street. I told you I was going to make you suffer 100-fold for what you did to Eri. I should make good on my promise. Grinning madly at Shisaki, I raised my hands and made the Enma palm sign. Domain expansion. Malevolent shrine. Rising from behind me, a disfeatured demonic Buddhist shrine came to life. Several bovine skulls emerged from nothing at the base of the shrine. The hip and gable rooftop quickly grew out, jutting horns, two smaller enclosed mouths in each gable, and human skulls that hung down from them. The shrine had 4 entrances, each designed as large, grotesque mouths that featured human-like teeth and tongues. Between the 2 layers of the roof was a smaller mouth filled with sharp teeth. Additionally, at each corner of the shrine stood 4 short, tree-like stumps with gnarled branches. Upon its creation, a wave of darkness and crimson spread out from the shrine, encompassing a 100-meter radius, bathing everything caught within it in a hellish landscape. Malevolent shrine. Unlike other domains, it does not cut out a separate space with a barrier. Manifesting a domain without a barrier was like painting in the air without a canvas. It is a truly divine feat. To top it off, by adding a pack to allow its victims a path of escape, it vastly increases the range of its guaranteed sure hit effect to a maximum of 200-meter radius. Though out of consideration for the still occupied homes, businesses, and schools in the distance, I restrained the effect to a 100-meter radius limited to the surface. As soon as my domain appeared, thousands upon thousands of non-stop cleaves and dismantles ripped Chisaki, and everything caught within the domain's 100-meter radius into pieces, slices, chunks, and ribbons. All up to the point, nothing remained. As I watched the relentless destruction with my hands pressed together, I laughed as Chisaki continued to rebuild himself after being torn to shreds in a repeating cycle of pain and violence. The reason his body had managed to hold out for so long was that I was restricting the output of my domain where he stood, ensuring he would get caught in a non-stop cycle of pain and agony. Opening square bracket closing square bracket. Plus 50 SP. Plus 90 SP. Plus 120 SP. Plus 145 SP. Opening square bracket closing square bracket. Who? Look at all those points. Chisaki screamed a silent scream as his mind was all but shattered at this point. It was only due to his body's biological need to survive that he continued to rebuild himself again and again unconsciously. Not bad, Chisaki, I said as I released the hand sign and made several pacts with myself to ensure the effects of my next move were similar to the real Sukuna's. Holding my hands in front of me, I watched with a grin as powerful flames sprang to life all around me, scorching and liquefying my surroundings in their intense heat. This may be overkill, but I don't care. I want to watch it all burn. Holding my hands out, I collected my flames into a large flaming arrow at my side. Due to the effects of my flames, everything within the domain began to heat up and burn to extreme levels, melting and distorting solid steel and rock into liquid. Raising my fire arrow, I aimed at Chisaki's repeatedly rebuilding body, which had been reduced to his normal human state due to all the lost biomass. Open. XXX. General Pav. What the hell is going on over there? I don't know. Let's hurry. Dashing through the streets, several pro-heroes who had answered the police calls for help dashed as fast as they could down the abandoned city streets. As they all ran, the loud sounds of destruction and explosions resounded out in front of them. The non-stop tremors that rocked the ground below them caused them to struggle to remain on their feet. Hey, what the hell is that? One of the heroes, a woman with sea green hair that reaches just past her shoulders and a short fringe with splayed ends held down by an orange bandana, said with wide eyes. This was the pro-hero, Fukukato Emi, otherwise known as Ms. Joke. At her remark, all the assembled heroes paused and gazed up at the sky as orange and red light spread across the horizon. Suddenly, the distant ruins of the destroyed city several meters ahead ignited in bright, scalding flames, followed by a massive pillar of fire that shot up into the heavens. Simultaneously, a powerful tremor shook the ground around them as if a mighty earthquake had struck, sending them all sprawling to the ground. Burning streams of fire danced around the pillar of flames as if celebrating its very creation. The pro-heroes could do nothing but watch in frozen terror until the divine pillar slowly faded, leaving behind several columns of dark smoke in its destructive wake. Let's go. Someone might need help. It was only due to her many years as a pro that Ms. Joke was able to break out of her stupor. Despite her shaking legs, she forced herself to run forward. Seeing Ms. Joke move, the rest of the heroes nodded shakily and followed after her. Running as fast as they could, the heroes all quickly reached the source of the flames. Hey. One of the heroes, a man dressed in a yellow and black costume, muttered. Wasn't there several buildings right here? No one had the courage to respond as the heroes looked around the expansive, empty area in front of them. There was nothing left within the 100-meter lot of space. Nothing but charred rock and bellowing pillars of smoke. Off in the background, ruined buildings lay in tatters with long cut-like gouges strewn across their surfaces. The level of destruction was on a completely different scale that no one present had ever seen outside a natural disaster. It wasn't far off to say that the scene before the heroes resembled that of an apocalyptic war zone. Hold on, Ms. Joke yelled as she spotted a figure somehow standing in the center of the destruction. You there. Are you okay? Standing behind several pillars of smoke, a shirtless figure turned to them with a grin. Due to the distance, the pros weren't able to make out any details other than the white, bloody, baggy martial arts pants and the several black tattoos covering his body. Hold on, tattoos. Isn't that a hero dressed as a firefighter, sporting a long yellow jacket with high visibility lines running down the center along his sleeve cuffs, hem, and high collar, as well as a red fireman hat said. This was the pro hero, Backdraft. As that, Sukuna. At his statement, the far-off figure grinned and turned around. Seeing Sukuna trying to escape, all the pro heroes moved in. Stop him. Don't let him get away. Hold it right there. As fast as they could, they all reached Sukuna's position. However, when they arrived, they quickly found that no one was there. Looking around in a panic, they all searched for the man they suspected to be responsible for the catastrophic attack. Find him. Don't let him get away. Backdraft yelled as he searched everywhere, but the pillars of smoke made it hard to see anything within the radius of the destruction. Come back here, you villain. Off above a rooftop several dozen meters away, Sukuna watched the heroes run around wildly in search of him. With nothing more to do, Sukuna turned around and vanished. Chapter 50. No. 50 Aftermath. General Pav. There's still no concrete explanation for the cause of the widespread destruction that occurred in the Florum ward. Luckily, the local police were conducting a routine evacuation drill that ended up saving thousands of lives. A newscaster dressed in a black suit looked into the camera and stated, "Witnesses to the event have reported seeing and hearing what could be described as a possible bomb explosion or a large-scale battle." However, in contrast to the claims made by the HPSC and the heroes present saying that was indeed the case, several eyewitness accounts suggest that the destruction resulted from a significant battle. Here are some interviews conducted by our on-site team just a few minutes after the incident. The screen changed to two young men with wide, frantic looks. Behind them were several rising pillars of smoke and piles of wreckage. And then there was this super large explosion followed by this massive earthquake that knocked me on my ass. The man to the right said as he made wide arm movements. But that was nothing to that laugh I heard in the direction where everything was going down. It was like, super maniacal. Yeah, I don't think what happened here was a bomb. I think it was some sort of fight. The second man said with his arms crossed. I'd bet my bottom dollar that this was a villain attack. The screen changed again to show a middle-aged woman with black hair with cat ears. I'm not sure if what I saw was real or not, but from where I was standing, I think I saw a person flying across the sky. The crazy thing is that whenever that person moved their arms, everything around them split apart. The woman recounted as she pointed up at the sky where she supposedly saw the figure. But a few minutes later, there was this enormous pillar of fire that shot up to the sky. It got so hot I thought I was going to burn alive. And I was several blocks away, too. The screen changed once more to a petrified older man. He was sitting on a street curb. This was no bomb. No, this was done by two men. Very, very powerful men. I've never seen anything like it. I'm telling you, this was a click. Placing the remote control down, the chairman for the HPSC looked away from the projector screen and turned to stare out at the gathered individuals sitting in the expansive meeting room. Sitting alongside the extra-long office table were all of the HPSC's highest-ranked members and officials. They all had grave and vexed expressions as they looked down at the papers before them. What happened in the Florum ward is now out of our control. The narrative has run away so far from us that our official statement is being treated like a conspiracy. The chairman spoke calmly as he looked over at the gathered individuals around the table. Standing beside him, a blonde woman with brushed back hair stepped forward and addressed all of the gathered members. This was the HPSC's vice chairman. As you all have been briefed, we have strong suspicions that the cause of the incident was Sukuna. The VP said, lifting her own remote to show a blurry image of Sukuna dressed in his white kimono and black Haori outfit. The pro heroes, Ms. Joke and Backdraft are very confident that he was on the scene right after the mysterious explosion of fire. Sukuna. One of the board members muttered with an annoyed expression. I thought we sent Lady Nagant to handle him. That we did. The chairman said as he adjusted his glasses, an annoyed look in his eyes. Unfortunately, we believe she was killed during her mission. All we found were scraps and pieces of her rifle with a large amount of her blood and hair at the scene. She was no match for Sukuna. That can't be. Nagant failed. What of the security cameras? Another member leaned on the table with a desperate look. Surely there must have been one camera that caught what truly happened in Florum. There were around 358 cameras in that location. The VP said as she scrolled through several slides before landing on a large map with hundreds of X's scattered across it. Unfortunately, they were all either tampered with or destroyed. Could Sukuna have something to do with the Yakuza? That was their territory, after all. A woman with short orange hair said. A bespectacled older man shook his head. That's very unlikely. The Shi-Hasaikai compound was reduced to rubble. At most, it seems that a possible battle between the group and Sukuna occurred, resulting in their destruction. That man must have followers. A high-ranked official muttered as she leaned back in her chair. It's inconceivable that a single man can perform such acts all on his own. Whether he works alone or not doesn't matter. What matters is that Sukuna must be taken down at all costs. A dark-skinned board member looked over at the chairman. It won't be long before the public becomes aware of him. And if the level of destruction in Florum is anything to go off from, Sukuna is much too powerful for any normal pro-hero to take on. We need All Might to step in. At the mention of the number one hero, everyone in the room began to utter their agreements and ideas. Standing still, the chairman seethed silently as he watched all those he gathered seemingly dismiss him. This wasn't a shock to the man. He could understand why they were all dismissing him despite his higher rank. It was due to his mishandling of the situation. If only he had handled the situation with Sukuna before the destruction of Florum, then he would still have the confidence of his upper staff. Enough. The chairman spoke loudly, his voice heavy with authority. Slowly, everyone within the room grew silent as they turned to him. I'm aware of the gravity of the situation, and I've made the proper arrangements to bring Sukuna down. I will not allow the so-called demon god to destroy the peace of this country. The chairman stepped forward and gave everyone a stone-cold glance, causing them all to remember why he was the chairman of the HPSC. On that, you have my word. XXX. Shimizu Soda Pav. The aroma of sizzling meat and vegetables wafted around my back courtyard. Smiling, I flipped a piece of tender beef and looked beside me at the two fold-out tables lined with cooked meats, vegetables, drinks, and sweets. What do you think, Eri-chan? Is it tasty? It's good. It's sweet. I smiled as Kana wiped the corner of Eri's mouth with a napkin. Eri smiled at her and then went in to take another bite of her candied apple. Brushing her hair back, Kana ignored her own plate of food in favor of doting on the small girl. Eri-chan. Eri-chan. You need to eat some meat, too. Hamiko smiled as she kneeled next to Eri with a piece of grilled steak between her chopsticks. Eri nodded and let herself be fed by Hamiko. Enjoying the taste, the little girl chewed happily on the food. We did a good thing, didn't we, Soda? A bandaged Jin said as he walked up beside me. His ever-present mask was nowhere to be seen. Lifting up his plate, I placed some grilled chicken and mushrooms on his plate. Yeah, it almost made getting stabbed worth it. I grinned and placed some more raw chicken on the grill. Then again, that's not really on Eri. I was just too weak at the time. Plus 10 SP. If you're weak, then what am I supposed to be? The strongest. That's what Jin proclaimed as he flexed his good arm. Still, what was that move of yours called again? The positive inverted technique. Flipping a thick slice of onion, I turned to him and grinned. Close. It's the reversed curse technique. It's pretty much when you multiply a negative against itself to get a positive. Easier said than done, though. But now that I understand it, I can pretty much heal any injury I get as long as I have enough cursed energy. That's so broken, Jin muttered as he looked down at his broken arm. It was now in a signed cast held up by a sling. It's been a week since our battle against the Shi-Hasaikai and the death of Chisaki. Throughout that time, countless reports and stories have been made to cover the unexplainable large-scale destruction that occurred in the Florum ward, where it all went down. You couldn't find a single news station that wasn't covering or creating its own scenarios or stories. The official story supplied by the HPSC and the police was that a bomb had accidentally gone off. However, a large number of the public didn't buy their story. Some were calling it an act of terrorism. Others a large-scale villain attack. But what interested me the most was that no one had used my name even after a group of heroes spotted me. Added Nobleman at. It's most likely the HPSC keeping the truth of the situation under wraps. Kana had said after Hamiko asked why the truth wasn't being told. They're trying to keep the public from knowing of Sukuna's existence. This made sense. Those in power would do anything to secure the semblance of peace within this country. No matter the cost. Hence Kaina's bloodied past. Still, I wasn't too interested in whether or not Sukuna took the credit or the fallout for what had happened. I was more worried about Eri. The young girl wasn't quick to believe me when I told her and everyone else that I had taken down Chisaki. After an hour of talking and convincing her that Chisaki was truly gone and that he would never hurt her again, Eri broke down into tears, causing Kaina and Himiko to forget their list of questions for me in favor of comforting the girl. But once Eri fell asleep from all her crying, it was finally time for me to explain how I survived. Explaining to them what the reversed cursed technique was went about as well as I thought. They understood what I was trying to get at, but the deeper concepts of how the technique worked were impossible for me to explain. It's sorta like this. You have to go fwoosh, f-wish, and fwoosh again. Sorta like that, I said as I made these odd hand motions. Safe to say they weren't amused. Himiko was rather annoyed I had knocked her out, but she quickly forgave me. That was on the condition that I would always greet her with a hug for the rest of my life. No matter the time or place. While it was a little embarrassing, it was better than receiving the cold shoulder from her all the time. Unlike Himiko, Jin was extremely happy that I had risen from death with little explanation other than the swooshes and swishes. The man had even given me a quick bro hug after I came back from wiping any traces of Chisaki from the planet. He was a real one for that. Kaina took my explanation in stride. Her words were that my abilities were already strange and powerful enough as they were. Being able to heal myself from the clutches of death shouldn't be that big of a stretch. But the weirdest thing to me was when she hugged me tightly and patted my shoulders. This was weird because she wasn't an overly touchy or emotional person. Well, that was unless it came to Eri. She became quite the mother hen when it came to her. The woman had some crazy maternal instincts. Moving on to Eri, the poor girl was still deeply traumatized by everything Chisaki had done to her. However, when I asked her what she wanted to do, whether that be going to an orphanage or staying with us, she grew into hysterics. Eri ran to Himiko and Kaina and began to cry, saying that she wanted to stay with the people who saved and comforted her. I can't believe you, Sukuna-kun. Himiko gave me the stink eye. Soda-san, you're terrible, said
Kaina. Not cool, bro. Not cool, Jin muttered. Their comments were harsh but not undeserved. Still, I needed to give Eri the choice. I didn't want her to feel like we would decide her future simply because we saved her. Soda Oni-san. Would you like to try some? Eri shyly asked after walking over to me. She looked back to Kaina and watched as the older woman gave her a nod. With newfound confidence, Eri held out her half-eaten candy apple toward me. Smiling at her, I kneeled and took a bite from her offered treat. Chewing, I brushed back her straight hair and picked her up. It's delicious. Moving over to the grill, I continued being the grill master and placed the finished beef onto a tray. What do you want to cook next, Eri? How about some broccoli? Can we put my apple on it? We may end up burning it. I grabbed some broccoli with my tongs and placed it on the grill. Here, let's try and cook some greens. Throughout the night, we all enjoyed a warm feast in honor of Eri. I looked around at my friends as they savored the meal and each other's company. Jin and Himiko were doing their best to make Eri laugh while Kaina and I exchanged amused smiles from our spot beside the tables. Looking up at the star-filled night sky, I let a small smile overtake my face as I enjoyed the company of everyone around me.